We are live. What is up, everybody? We are live on the Craft Growers Network. This is Gabby Staten Island with my bro Notsodog. And we are on Instagram. Just for a moment, I want to invite everyone that's watching on Instagram to go over to our YouTube channel at the Craft Growers Network. And you should see our live right away. We are not going to keep this on Instagram because, well, frankly, Instagram just hates me or hates the plant that we love. So please go over to YouTube. Check us out over there. The topic of discussion today is, are all sour diesels the same? And I wanted to talk about that. And then if we have time, I also wanted to talk about how some people just hate certain terpenes. Like, for instance, people hate citrus or jack terps. And I find this super confusing to me, how people can just hate like an entire, and I think hate is a really harsh word, but people actually use that word when they, talk about these terps. So everybody on Instagram, please again go over to the Craft Growers Network on YouTube, because we can't talk about this on Instagram. So I'm signing off right now. Hopefully you guys see this and head over to YouTube. Yes, we're down the sour rabbit hole. Share. So put this in here. Alrighty, just sending this. Share. Oh, damn, took it off. Sorry, guys.
Technical difficulties.
A little bit. There we go. Alrighty. So I don't think there's anyone more qualified to have this discussion with than Francis, frankly, because you're just so into the history of all these strains, not just the sour, but in general. And at least for me, there's nobody that I'd rather talk about this than with you. So the question that I have is, and I'm going to ask you first, and then we'll discuss it. Do we think that all the sour cuts are the same?
No.
I don't think so either. That's the short one. Bye, guys. We're done with the conversation. The answer is no.
And so maybe I'll tell a little history, I suppose.
Wait, before you do, I want to preface it with this. The reason why we're having this discussion, because a number of people, including JJ, have said that they think all sour diesels are the same. And I think saying that is frankly just ridiculous. Kevin Jodry had made a statement in the past that they tested all the OGs with DNA sequencing, and that all the OGs tested to be identical.
Yeah.
And I think that when that happened, and I have a ton of respect for Kevin, when they did that testing, they weren't doing the deep sequencing, right? So because they weren't doing the deep sequencing, if you do a very narrow sequencing, everything's going to show up the same.
I mean,
but like
I'm not a geneticist. I'll say that first, but I will say, that kind of, like, I'll give a quick defense of bro science for a second, right? And like bro science to me, like in weed, is observational science, because we were denied due to its illegality, and we still are to some degree, but we were denied for a long time using scientific tools right? Like, for instance, 25 years ago or something, Gabby would be like, man, I wish we could send in samples and figure out what makes the chem dog eat its leaves. But of course, in 2000 or what, you can't. Like, there was no option to do that. You couldn't figure out why. You could see that it was doing it, and you could see that, like, you fed it better meant that it wasn't doing it as much. But you couldn't figure out why. And so I think, like, part of the problem with stories is that, um, for the most part, like all the famous stuff that comes out of the 80s and 90s, people didn't know that what they were doing was going to be important later, right? Like, it was just a bunch of young dudes. In some cases, it was young partying dudes going, like, there was herm accidents, that kind of thing. And so I think with sour specifically, um, in the beginning, when people first started, like, for instance, like, also in my beginning, when people first started coming out to the West Coast looking for sour diesel, right? They didn't care about
Flour, you mean?
the flour. Yeah. They didn't care about the lineage at all. They didn't care about the name. They didn't care about anything but, do I get the nose when I open the bag? And does it look and smoke like something that's going to go for me back home easily? Nobody cared about what cut, who it came through. None of that mattered. What mattered was, did it have the nose and did it have the buzz? And if it had those two things, it would go. And so, I think even like, I think there was more than one sour diesel even early because it was just bag seed, you know?
I mean,
Um,
I think it's even common knowledge that, there was they say that AJ had the AJ number two and then he got the AJ number one, so I mean, even back then, there was more than one sour cut.
I mean, there was, and it's like things get labeled things for sale. Like, my headband, that's not mine or whatever. And this is another thing that we should maybe talk about, because sometimes I see people, Gabby sent me some stuff the other day about someone being like, oh, it's super egotistical to name something after yourself, you know?
Or
For
a
the
clown
record,
move.
yeah, well, for the record, I never named my thing Not So Sour. It's more like, even back in the day, it was sort of like, why do they call it the Choco Cut? Because there was this dude with a handle on the forums called Choco spreading it out. Why did they call it the Shroomy Cut? Because there was this dude in Pennsylvania that went by Shroomy 420 that was, and like, people need an ident. When there's just one cut, you can kind of call it by what it is. But with sour, I mean, I don't know if we went, so I don't know how many cuts there are, but there's a lot, and do I think some of them are the same? Sure. Like, me and a friend who will remain nameless, I never collected very many sour cuts because I got one cut labeled Sour D, and I stupidly thought that was it. So I didn't need to get sour. I had sour, right? And I grew sour, and I grew this headband cut that we call the LA, and that covered all of my diesel needs for the longest time. And then when I got more into the forums and more into, like, IG and stuff, people kept asking me, like, what cut is it? I'm like, I have no idea, right? So I started gathering cuts to grow side by side, and I gathered up the Shroomy, some people call it the Amish, the Choco, the ECSD, the NYCD, the Joe B sour. I gathered up 7 or 8 different ones, and I grew them side by side, indoor, in greenhouses and depths. And you could see a bunch of differences, right? Like, they were all obviously the same family, but they had variations. And then right after I stopped doing that, sour got popular again. And all of a sudden there was these names that I'd never heard of before, like the Catskills cut, the Weasel Diesel, the Albany cut, the Hunter Mountain cut, and all of these cuts claim to come from the Winwang, all these cuts claimed some part of New York history.
Well, one thing I want to say about this is People call the cut the Weasel cut or the Hunter Mountain cut. And whenever I hear that, it kind of triggers me because I'm like defensive of my friend the Weasel. I'm like, he never named cut the Weasel cut.
I
He
mean,
never
there's a
named, and so,
yeah.
so like other people are using his name to try to like build um the reputation of a cut. Say, oh,
Yeah.
this is the Weasel cut. There's
Well,
no
because
Weasel cut.
yeah, when it got made popular again, all of a sudden the lineage became very important. When prior, 15 years prior, when it got popular the first time, beyond just like the little New York area, when it became sort of like the most popular strain in America for 10 years or whatever, nobody cared about lineage. People wanted to open the turkey bag and they wanted a certain nose to hit them. They wanted to burn a joint and they wanted it to taste a certain way. Nobody cared at all about lineage. I mean, I'm not going to say nobody, but let's just say that for the most part, that wasn't the important part, right? And then today it became all of a sudden like the real sour, the first sour, the this sour. Everyone wants the original one. They don't want, and Rez came out with a seed line. I mean, I should say just like Weasel, you know, Rez has no idea why there's a Rez cut. He says he never named anything the res cut. He says that most of the people that have the res cut doesn't even trace back to him, so he has no idea.
Because people just lie.
Yeah, I'm sure it's the same thing with our homie. You can't trace the weasel cut back to him, because it's like there wasn't a weasel diesel. I mean, it's cute that it rhymes, you know but I think there was bag seeds very early. I think there was multiple people in the group. I mean, um one of the guys that doesn't get talked about all that much, but it was his grow or whatever that the sour came out of, was a dude Vondo, you know, and
Did you know I have a history with Vondo?
I do, yeah, and he told me that when he moved to LA in the later 90s or whatever, 97 or something, he popped a new seed of diesel
Are you sure he
from,
said when he moved to LA?
yeah,
Because he moved to Northern California and I actually taught him how to grow.
and he
So
well
I don't remember
he
him ever moving to LA. I thought he moved back to the East Coast.
No, he went to LA for, like, I can't tell that story, but he went to LA first, and then I think he ended up in like working at a store in Santa Cruz, maybe.
Right, but that was afterwards, I think.
Yes. I think in the
Right.
beginning he moved out to LA first. I mean, regardless, he can speak about it if he wants, but what I know for a fact is that he brought bag seeds with him from back east, from the room that the accident happened, and he popped and picked a new pheno.
So let's just put it like this. That's what he says.
Sure, yeah.
And that's what people saying, you know, frankly, I don't think that's I'll just leave it as I don't think that's the story. I don't
I mean,
think
let's put
that
it this
he's
way.
as responsible for the
Like,
sour diesel as many people say he is.
they but I'm not saying like that's assuming.
But that's just another sour cut, maybe. There
That's
could
what
be,
I'm
right?
saying. That's assuming that like we're looking for the one true cut, instead of like this person had a cut and that person had a cut. And I'll give you an example. 6 7 years ago, I was at a party and I was talking to one of the guys that was very early on in the OG scene in LA. Okay. And he had just bought 2 pounds of OG for $8,000 a pound. All right. And he's rolling himself a joint, thinking about this hustle he's going to do. And he says, as he's breaking up the weed, out rolls the seed. And he looks at me and he goes, so I'm looking at this seed that came out of weed that I just happily spent 8 grand a pound for. And then I decided that before I sold any of it, I was going to look through every single nugget and see if I could find any more beans, because there was no way I could get the cut. And supposedly that that seed became what's known as poison OG. Right. So obviously we know, not to talk about OG for a second, but like we know that
No,
these,
it's the same
but I
subject.
just mean like dudes brought one cutting of Kush to Los Angeles, and within 15 years there was probably 20 cuts. There was Fire. There was SFV. There was Josh D. There was, there was, 92. There was this one. There was that one. There was different OGs. There was Pure Kushes. There was Topanga. There was Suge. There was, and it all started from like essentially what we think of as one cut. Now, how did that happen? You know? So my thing is that like for sour, to me, sour is like chem skunk. If you want to know what I think, it's got the flavor and some of the stretch and some of the look of skunk, super skunk look, and then I think it's got more power, because a lot of people don't know this, but like the skunks that we had back in the day, even though they were really fragrant and stuff, they weren't that potent compared to
JJ
chem.
called it Bud Light.
They just weren't that potent. Like, and a lot of
Well,
times,
they weren't potent to people that were smoking the dog or the 91 or
yeah,
other
they
potent
weren't.
stuff. But the average Joe on the street would still wreck them.
And it's a weird thing where if you look at like a lot of extremely terpy strains, they tend to be light or moderate in potency. Not all of them, but a lot of them. It's almost like there's more terps than THC. I don't know. So to me, like the whole sour thing, it's more like with some strains, there's one cut and you can get the cut and you can decide if you like it or not. With Diesel's a giant family now. With I don't know how many cuts there are, but let's just say there's easily over a dozen. It could be as many as 20. Some are bag seeds, some tie back to different things, some are healthier than others. And so the blessing of that is if you like Diesel, you can try a bunch of them and figure out which one suits your needs. And I don't know that the lineage is all that important. Like, I mean, I like stories, don't get me wrong, but most of the time when I've done like my like weed historian thing, is it's like you get back a certain length and it's like there's friends that don't get along anymore. There's friends that don't agree on what exactly happened. There's friends that have different memories on various things that happen. And and eventually it just ends up as a mystery to some degree. Like, and people want certainty on this thing that was like, I mean, how did sour start, right? A couple of dudes were buying herb off Weasel, and they were, every time they found a seed, they put it into a baggie. And Weasel was growing not one, not two, but probably 6 or 8 different things. And over a course of a year, every time they found a seed, they put that seed in a baggie. And then sometime they got an apartment and they started popping some of those seeds. And lo and behold, some of those seeds hermed and made different seeds. And then they sold some seedy weed. And then this dude pulled some seed out of that seedy weed and then named it this. And we're going to try to figure out exactly what happened. And I feel like
Not possible.
it's just not possible. And none of the starting material exists anymore either. Like, it's not like all those plants that were in Weasel's room exist.
The RFK's gone.
The RFK 1, 2, and 3 are gone. I mean, maybe the chem, but like you go through the list of everything that he had in his room, gone, 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 gone. So, and it's like sour is like bag seed of bag seed of bag seed. And then early on, just like other things that it was worth a lot of money and it was really popular, I would imagine that those bag seeds kept happening and that people would get those seeds and make their own little versions. And then original Diesel shows up and there's Vermont this, there's that this, there's upstate New York this, there's that. And then it goes out to California and it gets its own thing. And it's like, you know, Gabby and I will tell you, like, when brokers come looking, people will adapt names to make the broker happy.
I mean, the
Because
same
most,
thing is happening today, like with LCG, or Runts. When the Runts was making a big run, people just named their shit Runts because that's what people wanted to buy. Like people started calling wedding cake Runts because there came a point where anything with cake on it was like nobody wanted it. But yet the buyers were still so uneducated and so clueless that you just relabeled your wedding cake as as runts, and then they
Yeah.
bought it. And
I mean,
so that's what
that
people are
headband that I
doing.
have, it's like brokers renamed that Sour. And then some of our mutual friends and stuff even just started calling it Sour because they got tired of like the brokers like they were like, this is the best sour I've ever had. But it's not sour, you know, but they labeled it that because on the other end, that's what made it easy. Because it turns out that most of the people that were coming up to Mendo or Humboldt looking for weed, they weren't actually the money guy. They were the guy that the money guy paid
Right.
to come up and hunt for things, and they just needed to fill the order to make their money. And so people have been, you know, like names are super fluid. You know, they get changed a lot. Like the Chem Dog, for instance, it started off as Chem Dog, and then, Gabby shortened it to Dog because he was an organic grower and didn't like calling his weed Chem. And we all called it the Dog. And then when it got on the internet, it became the Chem 91 or the what Gabby made a sticker for, the skunk VA cut,
You can
you
say it.
know?
You can
Huh?
say it.
But
You can
I
say
just,
it
yeah,
for
don't call it that.
relevance.
But it's like, but I just mean that like people needed a moniker of something to attach it to, right? And so it goes through changes. You know, there was this strain in Minneapolis called Electric Boogaloo, and it went out to Oregon, and this guy in Oregon had this strain called the cat piss, and he thought it would be super funny to have cat piss and dog shit, so he renamed the Electric Boogaloo the dog shit. Now the Electric Boogaloo was probably a rename in itself, because hippies and pot smokers and stuff, we tend to give little nicknames, and then depending on who you got it from, that nickname changes. And then on top of that, like going back to Sour Diesel, Res, I can't remember what year, but Res released a seed line in '08 or '09 or 2007, sometime in that range. It's a long time ago, and he called it Sour D, right? So it's like after that, it's like everyone's popping seeds of Sour D, right? And it's like there's so many diesel cuts that now I don't even think that people name them after themselves. I think it's like people identify where it came from, because otherwise it's like I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, part of the reason I gathered up all those sour cuts is I wanted to figure out what cut I had and what name people attached to it. And then it turns out when I grew all of them, it wasn't any of those. But there was a few that I got that were the same thing with different names.
Yeah.
Like the Choco, the version of Choco that I got and the version of East Coast Sour Diesel that I got, they were the same plant.
Do me a favor, Francis. Just take a step back because you're not completely centered. You don't have to be that far, but that's good right there.
The weird
Um,
part about it is in my
I
camera,
feel the same way as you. I might have a couple of sours that are the same, but I'm not sure of it. And because I'm not sure of it, that's why I'm keeping them all.
yeah,
And you know, I I'm hoping that with some testing that I can figure out, and if some of them are the same, then maybe I can eliminate some. But you know, I think so. You said that you don't think the lineage is important, or
I think stories are cool. I think finding herb that you prefer to smoke is cooler.
yeah, I agree. I think that for preservation purposes, the lineage is important. And keeping this information as much as possible, as detailed as possible, is really helpful. Now, sometimes there's going to be gaps and dead ends, and there's nothing we can do about that. But for instance, if somebody buys, let's say, the the not so sour, right? And then they give it to somebody else, and then they give it to somebody else. The best way I think to describe it is say, hey, I got the not so sour from my buddy John, who got it from this person, who got it from not so.
Yeah.
If you can trace it directly back, that helps because then we can
No,
know,
that's
like,
true.
if you're actually looking for that specific cut,
It helps.
down the line, that stuff doesn't get
I
muddy.
mean,
And
I
and
have this joke.
that's what I think VA should have done from the beginning. And I know that, and I'm going to state this for the record. I know that he didn't name his cut the VA cut, because
He
every
didn't.
single time I say this, people say, "Oh, he didn't name it that." But the thing is he embraced it. Okay, and then he did make posts with saying that a few times, and to me, not only is that disrespectful, but that's what makes people think that there's two different cuts when maybe they're the same. And that's why I think the lineage is far more important than the name. And the quality of the weed. Like if
The,
you
the, the
and
problem
also
the
think about
problem
this:
with lineage,
the
and
less people in between, the more that we know that it's probably right. So, for instance, if you got the not so sour from somebody who got it from somebody else 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 who got it from not so, there's all those times in the middle where something can happen,
yeah.
right? So the closer you get it to the source, that has value,
I mean, I
right?
tell people all the time, like, because there's all these people that have these stories of since '96 and all these things where their sour traces back to the Garden of Eden, and it's like guaranteed the first one. And I tell people whenever they ask, it's like, I got it this year. It was helpfully labeled Sour D. I never lost it. I don't know anything, like nothing verifiable whatsoever about prior to that. But I can tell you that I've had it this whole time, you know, like, and so like it predates a bunch of different things. But does that mean it's original? I'm not. Is it an early bag seed? I have no idea. Like, how would I know? It's not. It's like people don't think that, like, when you and I were getting cuts from friends, it wasn't like it was like Inspector Gadget, like where you just like researched the entire history of the, like, you got a strain and it was called this and you were cool with it, you know? And like, I mean, I think, like, even like the funny thing about the diesel is I got the diesel early enough that it was almost like we had to go through the whole first purple craze before it even became popular. Like the whole purple Urkel, Granddaddy Perps, Grape Ape, Mendo P, all that stuff. That was all the rage in our area. It was almost like diesel became popular after that. People didn't even want it early enough because it wasn't the hype. I can't see people's comments without like
Oh, don't worry
going,
about it. I'll let you know if there's any. I'll post some on the bottom if there's anything important.
but it's like, so it's like now it's like people want to know. And it's like, I've talked to most of the people involved in Sour. Gabby has too. It's like there's some broad agreement on certain things and then there's some disagreement on others. Not everybody's version of the 4, 5, or 6 dudes who were there the earliest. I wouldn't say their stories all line up, would you?
Oh, absolutely not.
And so it's
You know,
like if their
I mean, like,
stories,
you know, I have, so unfortunately, hey, apparently we have somebody that we need to block. So I don't see him, but apparently Piff Ghost is talking shit, and um, I'd appreciate it if you didn't do that because we can talk shit too. So that's not what we're here to do. I don't want to block you. If you want to watch, you can watch. But if you want to make this into a show about you, we can do that.
I don't
So,
want to do that
well,
actually. I mean,
I don't either. But I mean, that's not what we're trying to do here. But if he's going to try to take over our conversation, so
I
um,
mean, I don't know. That dude he's accused me before of like naming it after myself, which, I mean, obviously I
I mean,
never did that.
I made fun of you about it too.
You
But
know,
I know you didn't.
I
I know it
didn't, I
wasn't the
didn't,
same.
I didn't, and I've been super clear that like I just got it labeled as a clone. I don't know which one it is. I've had it a long time. It came to me as Sour D. I
Something
don't
that I
know any.
think is important is I think, and I'd like the people in the chat to respond to this. I think it's better to say you don't know and maybe name it something else, like I did with the Gabby Staten Island, than to mislabel something. So if you know for instance, when I got the sour cut, the Gabby, I didn't know what it was, right? But what it reminded me the most of is the cut that I've held forever, the original sour. And if people go back and watch the video that I made, like that first video when I was um, smoking, smoking that joint, walking at night, I said, hey, what I'm thinking I'm going to do is I'm going to stop selling the one that's the original, because I felt that they were so similar that, and the terps and everything about the new one was so much better that um, I figured, why would anybody want to buy the one that I call the original? But what I found was people actually did. And like when I stopped selling it, people like, no, I want that one, or I want that one too. I want to grow them side by side. So like now I've got, I think like 5 or 6 different sours, when, like I said,
I mean,
really.
the other hard thing about sour diesel is that there are certain plants that I think express in a pretty limited range, no matter how they're grown. And sour is not one of those. Sour is one that seemingly can express very differently depending on temperature, type of food, type of light. It seems pretty environmentally sensitive. You know, and so, you know, that's why I think, like, if you're going to compare them, um, it's best to compare them. It's best to compare them in the same greenhouse or the same run or the same room or what have you, so that both plants are getting the same. Um, you know, it it you know it
Hey, hey,
huh.
I'm gonna interrupt you. Sorry, buddy. And we said we weren't going to make this the Pifco show, but he
Oh
made
my
a
God.
he made a comment, so I want to read his comment. He said, "What do Gabby and Notso have in common? They both named the sour cut that they didn't breed after themselves. Laugh, laugh, laugh." Right. So my response to this is, the Piff was made before Piff Coast existed. He named his entire company after a strain that he has nothing to do with. So, and like we said, Natso didn't name the cut after himself, and I did it as a joke. So, you know,
I mean, I even when I was first years ago, when I was on the other podcast, let's just say, there was some people that started selling cuts, not so's headband and not so sour, and I tried to get them to stop because I was like,
that's
hey,
how
I'm like,
this happened. I'm
yeah,
glad you're telling the story. Why don't you tell that whole story?
and it was like people were selling it for $750 a cut, and people were getting all excited and buying it, and I hit up a couple people and I was like, hey, I don't care that you're selling cuts, that's your business, but unless you got it from me, or unless you can tell me who you got it from, that it came from me, don't say it's from me, because then people might buy it hoping that it's the one that I'm talking about, and it's not. And so, like, I don't have anything out in the world that is like, the whole like breeder thing or whatever else. Like, most famous stuff is an accident anyway. Even like the Mendo P, which I personally popped, I didn't do anything to breed it. I was gifted seeds. I mean, we gave it the incredibly creative name Mendocino Purple, because at the time there wasn't very much purple and we didn't know anything else about it other than that. But I think when it comes to sour, it's like, I don't think Jay Plant Speaker named it after himself. I don't think a bunch of people named it after themselves. I think they have a sour cut and they're like, oh, where's it from? And they're like, oh, it's the JP, or it's the Notso, or it's the AJ. I don't know if
Like I
AJ,
said, I think that. So I'm trying to remember who it was. It was Mean Gene. That when somebody that will stop mentioning his name made that post about people naming cuts after themselves that they had nothing to do with, a clown. um, Mean Gene was like, hey, it was a joke. And I think it's good when people put their name on it, because then like where it came from. Now, my response to that is, the best thing to do is say, I got the Chem 91 from VA. You don't have to say it's the VA cut. You can say, I got it from
yeah,
VA.
through,
Because,
and that's,
because, because the thing is this, when you say, I have the VA cut. Okay. But you didn't get it from VA. You got it from 10 people down the line. Like, you know, any one of those people could have lied, and many of
Sure.
them
Or made a
have,
mistake.
right? So like, saying that you have, like I said, I think like where it came from, the provenance matters.
I
And
don't
as you,
think I don't think Chaco named it after himself.
yeah, so the people that have had these cuts with their name attached to it, um, you know, I just think it's better to say, hey, you know what, I I you know I don't want the cut named after myself. It's funny because people have said to me recently, "Oh, you're Gabby, you're the sour guy, right?" And I'm like, "No." Like, why am I the sour guy? I have a sour cut. The only person who's the 91 guy, that's Greg.
Yeah.
I mean, Greg is the dog. He's Chem Dog. And I think it's disrespectful to anyone um, put their name on a cut that's not theirs. Like, for example, okay, I have, you know, a number of runts, and if I just call it the Gabby runts because I have it, it's like that, and that doesn't tell people what the strain actually is.
I mean,
So
part of the problem with sours, like I said, there's so many of them that people need some kind of identifier. And it, generally speaking, has either been a regional identifier or the name of the person that spread it on the forums or on social media. Like the Amish cut as a play on the Shroomy cut, and they called it the Amish cut because Shroomy lived in Pennsylvania, where there's a bunch of Amish. You know, um, I don't know the origin behind all of it or whatever, but it's like, I think, there are people out there that try to claim things. I've been super clear on mine that it's like I got it when I got it, and I've had it this long, and I don't know any backstory to it. You
so
know?
you know how Rez, you say he didn't name his sour
Yeah,
the Rez
he
sour,
claims he.
but he should have, because just calling it the sour diesel, that does the same thing. That like makes people think that it's the AJ, and by the way, to make a point, why the fuck is it the AJ? He never popped any of the seeds either. He's just the guy that sold the weed.
Yeah.
You know,
So it's like this kind
so
of stuff happens, and then stuff gets attached, and then later on it's like, oh, it's ego. It's, in some cases it might be ego. Some people intentionally. I'm not saying that there's not people out there that don't try to take credit for stuff or don't intentionally change the name, but for the most part, it's like names were pretty fluid things. And especially for most of weed history, people stayed anonymous for the most part. So it's like it's only in this very recent era where people are trying to like promote themselves and make a brand, and you know what I mean, and like and say, oh, I'm important, or I'm this or that, or what have you. They're like, I mean, I'm sure when all these people were naming stuff, like when we first went legal, right? And they came in and they pulled everything off the shelves that had kid names. I'm sure when they named Cindy 99, right? They weren't thinking that like, oh, 15 years later, 20 years later, we're gonna have an incident with Disney and trademarks. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't realize it, or even like, Girl Scout cookies, right? The reason why they had to change it to cookies is because they got sued by Girl Scouts. They couldn't call it Thin Mint, you know? That's why they call it original GSC, because that's a trademark that's owned by people, And so there was a thing in weed for a long time, like with pop culture, where we kind of put our own twist onto things and we name things after movies or cultural things or, different types of stuff. And some of that stuff, as it's gone legal. I mean, I remember when Colorado first went legal and they came in and they took every edible off the shelf because it was all plays on Rice Krispie treats and it was all Reese's peanut butter cups and it used the same imagery and the same names for all their edibles. But that stuff was all trademark candy stuff. And so it all got removed.
did you see the question that I just posted?
I don't think so, no.
It says not so. This is a bit of a strange question, but I'm into the counterculture stuff. Care to us the tell us the story behind the murder cut from LA?
Sure. Um,
You don't look happy about it.
well, so in LA, as I mentioned previously, um, when Kush first hit, it was extremely in demand and it was going for extremely high prices, right? And so as a result of that, the people that had access to it were making quite a bit of money. And LA is a big place and there's a lot of stuff going on. There's gangsters, there's all kinds of stuff down there. And it was big money. And so there was this cut. I don't know what it was called. It was some kind of Kush cut. And it was not supposed to get out and it got to someone. And let's just say that there was some violence over it that was severe. All right. So this guy, who will remain nameless, took it to the Bay and stayed at a friend's house. And they wanted to grow and sell this cut, but they did not want any of the violence or any of the heat from Southern California to follow them up to the Bay over it. So they decided to rename it something else. And they chose the name Headband to sell it under. Okay. And that worked. And then there was the guy's roommate uh, was selling a tray of cuts to a friend, and the dude came over, and apparently he got given a tray of the headband instead of whatever other strain he was supposed to get a tray of, and that's how it leaked, and that's how like I got it. That's how um, our friend, that's how Ben got it, right? That's how some other people we know got it, and for a while it was just called Headband, right? Later on, that became a problem because people started thinking, well, maybe it was the New York headband. Maybe it was the Mother to Sour. Maybe, oh, wait, no, it came directly from New York. Maybe it's this. And there's the Loompa headband, and there's the LA headband, and there's the Bloomington headband, and and so all of a sudden there's too many, and like they needed a moniker to come up with, like, well, how do we differentiate this headband from the others? Right. And one of the suggestions was name it the murder cut, which I thought was an extremely bad taste. And so we call it the 56, simply because when you take it at about 8 weeks, between 8 and 9 weeks, that's when it tests highest for THC. Some people like to take it 9 or 10 weeks, and they like the smoke more, but it definitely tests the highest at around 8. And so that's how it got the 56 moniker. And I think the 56 moniker stuck a little bit just because it was less offensive than a couple of the other names that were bandied about. But some people say from that story that it's the original cut of OG that was brought out to LA, and that's why there was violence over it. I have a friend who grew up with some of our mutual friends, Gabby from Oregon, and blows glass down in Southern California, and who used to buy sacks of weed off of Matt and Josh in the 90s. And he says it's the closest thing he's seen to the original cut of Kush that existed. Now, is it? I don't know. No idea. I got it as Headband, and they intentionally renamed it as Headband to throw people off the trail because at the time that they brought it to the Bay, Kush was getting 7,200 a pound wholesale in LA. And who had access to it and who had control of it was serious business. So that's kind of the story. It does. Is it the weird thing about that cut is it's the most potent OG I know of. It's definitely not the prettiest, and it's definitely not the most flavy. Although it does have a distinct Kush flavor. The other Kush cuts I think are a little bit more lip smacking, and there's plenty of Kush cuts that are a lot more blown out and pretty looking. You know, um, but yeah, it's a renamed OG of some type. That's what it is. But they intentionally called it Headband to throw off the trail of the people in Southern California that were angry about it and had already done violence over it. Because that's all they cared about, was the violence not following them up to the bay. And that's really all I know.
Well, we thank you for that story. And the one thing I want to get back to is like, as some people say that all sour cuts are the same. I just think that is the most ridiculous statement. Equally as ridiculous as saying that all OGs are the same. And the reason for that is that's saying no one has ever worked with these genetics, that it's a clone only. There's been no more happy accidents. There's been no more intentional breeding. And we know this isn't true. I mean, a lot of people say that the res cut or, the res work is the closest stuff to the original sour that there is. Well, right there, that's proof. Like it's seed work, and it's seed work that, then many other people have based their lines and done,
I mean,
back
like
crosses with,
the story I told about the poison OG. It's like, if you have a famous strain that is getting top dollar back in the day, and you can't get the cut, but you find a bag seed, right? Then, like, that bag seed, you might pop it and just name it that same thing, because now you have a version of it and you can make good money off it. It could be that simple. Like I said, one cut of Kush made its way to LA. And over the next 15 plus years, all of a sudden there was an entire family of Kush. But it wasn't a seed line. It started off as one plant. Sour, I think, was born of bag seeds, and multiple people seemed to have the bag seeds, and different phenols started getting passed around, and it seemed like, it hermed quite a bit early on, and people would get stuff. I mean, the Kush story started with a herm, right? It started with some bag seeds. And so I think that, it's just rather than like one, and most of these things weren't even bred. They were happy accidents for
100%.
And then it's like, now 20 years later, 30 years later, we're all trying to ascribe, well, who, and people, but also it's like people get famous for just being there. I mean, I think part of the reason why people listen to me or even you or whatever is just by virtue of us being around for some of that stuff. And they get to hear about people that were there. So it's like, some people take that ethically, and some people take it to, like, I'm going to use this for the best of my ability to advance what I want.
So Golden Coast made a statement, said you can only distinguish them if you've been around them since the beginning and experienced them as they popped. And so my response to that is maybe,
Well, yeah.
or maybe to be sure you don't make that assumption or
Well,
have that type of arrogance that you can do it. You're also assuming that there haven't been epigenetic changes. You're also assuming that there hasn't been good breeding done,
like,
because
to take it
the
to the
best
Kush
breeders
thing
could
first.
do um, not a reversal, but inbreeding. Take something to F5 or F6, and if they do it properly, then maybe they can get something that's very similar to
I
what you're
mean,
looking for.
what I was just mentioning about the Kush, is like, I feel like the really early Kushes were kind of ugly compared to some of the later stuff. Like, they didn't have the greatest bag appeal. They had a great nose and they were super potent, especially compared to what was out at the time. But it was almost like when that you were just talking about, when the breeding and some of the other stuff got into it, some of the later OGs started looking a lot more silvery, started looking a lot more bag appeal, like a lot more bam to them, where the oldest ones were sort of kind of like a little ugly Afghan. Like, you remember, we won't name names, but like, one of my favorite cuts, and I hope it still exists somewhere, is Gabby and I had this really tall and lanky master Kush cutting, right? That we had some friends that brought it up from Southern California in the very early 2000s when they moved up to Mendo, and it was ugly looking. It had the least bag appeal of any of the Kush cuts I'd seen, but it had the most lip smacking flavor. So it was often with brokers, people would look at it and be like, nah, that's not the one. But then you'd smoke a joint of it with them and they'd be like, okay, I'll take everything you got, because it worked. It was ugly.
Taste.
It wasn't very frosty. It was dark even. It was kind of a darker, not very frosty, not very pretty looking Kush plant. But man, it literally had like lip smacking, roll the flavor around in your mouth when you were done taking a hit type of thing to it. And I mean, so it's like, and part of the problem too is that now in the last 10 or 15 years where people have been able to like show their face and become famous or whatever, or micro celebrities in some fashion, you just walk out of the shadows with stories and you're not even sure how accurate they are.
Dude, are you talking about me?
Yeah, well, I mean, like not to I don't even know how to say that one.
Go ahead. You don't have to
Okay, I'll
hold any
say it.
punches with me.
So when I first met Gabby, okay, I got this skunk cut from him, right? And he would tell me all these stories about meeting the guys at the warfield and going back east and getting it and getting the chem at the same time and bringing it all back and da 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 and all this different stuff. And we had this cut and we used it in our Superdog breeding and we had it for a long time. We lost it. And and then it wasn't until like Gabby and Skunk VA got back together and started doing some chats or whatever, that all of a sudden it came up that like maybe that wasn't the Virginia cut. Maybe Gabby lost it like right before I met him, and it was actually a super skunk cut that he had.
I've lost a lot of cuts.
But you didn't tell me. It wasn't like you ever said back in the day, I just
I mean,
lost this.
this is when
I'm not trying to
no,
put you on the spot or
it's
anything
okay.
like that, because it's
Francis,
like,
you should put me on the spot because everyone's gonna love it and I'm cool with it. And we're just having this discussion. But so here's why I disagree with you. And here's
okay.
why, and like I'm gonna preface this by saying that Francis's memory is far better than mine. And that's why I like to have him on these shows and he reminds me of all this stuff. But here's why I don't think what you're saying is accurate. We used to hold the Sensi Seed
Yeah,
catalog up
I
against
remember.
the thing and
Yeah.
say, look, it's that. And that's because that was the Sensi Seed Super Skunk that was acquired afterwards.
So,
So
to people listening, that's a perfect example of 27 years ago or something. Gabby and I are sitting on a couch bullshitting about something, and we have a different memory of
but
what happened. Now, are we both there?
it
Yeah.
makes more sense because that you remember that we used to hold that catalog up against
I
the
freely
mud
I
and it
I
looked
remember
exactly
that
the same.
100%.
We used to do it all the
And
time. And the cut from Virginia wasn't exactly the same.
so
Like because that one I think was like from the original Super Skunk seeds, but it was like an F3 or an F4. So,
so who
you know,
knows? And
yeah.
that's part of it, is like, is memories aren't perfect. Memories change, you know? Like, I mean, I'm not gonna like, there's a dude Swell that's like part of the early sour story, right? And he grew, Diesel 2, which is supposedly the bud that the seeds of what became known as sour diesel were found in, right? He told me that they maybe had that strain a year and a half or 2 years. He lost it by 97 and he hadn't seen it since. And then when New York went legal, he was like confidently identifying people that had the cut, like from Vermont. Now, could that be true? Sure. But memories are weird. They just are, and so sometimes
That's
people are
why it's
lying.
so important to document the stories live. That's
Sometimes
why
people might
I made
lie,
the
but they
channel.
also
Yeah.
might just remember things differently. Like Gabby and I are telling a story. Like, I have stories with my brother and my sister where it was all three of us and my mom. And I have crystal clear memory of something that they don't remember at all. But we
Can
were
we
all
tell
there.
can we tell a story, Francis, that's a little bit off topic?
Oh my God. Depends. Sure.
I think you like this story. So this is proof that Francis is more credible than I am. So with everything that I say, um, about, I think he knew that it was the super skunk or that was discussed. Francis told me this story about how I picked him up in jail. Okay. I want you to tell that story because Francis said to me, he says, "Hey, Gabby, do you remember when you picked me up at jail at midnight?" And I said, "No, I don't remember that." And Francis told the story, and I want you to tell the story because I want us to document our story, right? That's what this is all
Yeah.
about. But as you were telling it, it was like sparking some memories, like, and I know it's true, right? Because like you were in jail, it was important to you. But anyway, go ahead and tell the story because I
Um,
want to document it.
I uh, I don't exactly know where to begin, but
You
I
got in
wrote.
trouble and you got locked up.
I got in trouble. It was a very dumb way to get in trouble. I don't know if you can hear my dog barking. My kids
It's
are
okay.
home.
Not a big deal.
Anyway, I got in trouble. It was the dumbest way to ever get in trouble. I was bringing um, Gabby and I had a mutually really good friend who passed away a long time ago, sadly, 20 years ago now. And he had an aunt in San Diego that had glaucoma. And so he called me up and he was like, like treating glaucoma. Sorry, I stumbled over the word. Treating glaucoma, one of the things that actually like you could get a medical card for when it was pretty hard to get one was for treatment of glaucoma, right? And so she didn't have any money. She was a school teacher. And so Sean was like, why don't you bring her 2 peas? You give her one and I'll buy one from you. So I go down there to give it to her. And long story short, I get busted on the way down there. Okay. And I end up having to do, I think, 98 days in Orange County. And as part of my gig. And Gabby came and picked me up. So it's a really strong memory for me because, and if you're cool, so this is the part that I don't know,
Well,
some
put in
people might,
perspective, Orange County, that's where it was Orange County where you got
yeah,
busted, right?
yeah,
From Mendocino County, that's like a 8, 9 hour drive
yeah,
without
it's
stopping.
long. And so I did this thing where it was like, people don't know this, but like you have a release date, okay? When you get incarcerated, all right, and when they give you a release date, it can change on good behavior, bad behavior, whatever, but your release date, they have to release you on that date. So if they like you and you were a decent human being when you were in there, they'll release you as soon as the day hits. So like at 12 o'clock midnight, 12:01, they'll be releasing you so you can get out and go home, right? If you were a dick to them and they didn't like you and you were a pain in the ass, they'll release you at 11:59 p.m. on that date. Like they'll hold you the entire time.
1201.
Well, no, they have
Oh,
to
right.
release,
The other way.
like they have to release you on that date. So if you're cool, it's 12:01 a.m. If you weren't cool to them, it's 11:59 p.m. They'll keep you the entire 24 hours, right? So I was cool. So they let me out at 12:01. So I'm walking out of this thing. I've been in the clink for 98 days or whatever the hell it was. And I've got Gabby out there. You had that black Silverado at the time, right? So I get in the car with Gabby, and the first thing he says to me is he's like, "This is a long drive, and I'm really tired. You drive." So I haven't been out of jail in, 3.5 months or something like that. So I get in and I start driving. And the weirdest thing is on the radio, they were playing Patsy Cline Walking After Midnight, you know? And Gabby had this snodgrass pipe that he'd packed with weed that he had hash on top of it. And he hands it to me and he said, "Time to break your fast." Right. And I hadn't smoked, obviously, in whatever it was, 90, 100 days or something like that. And so I remember thinking to myself, like looking at this like big pile of hash on top of this little pipe or whatever, and I was like, man, I wonder if I get too stoned. And no, that wasn't the case. I was fine. But yeah, Gabby actually came and picked me up from jail, and we drove home. And yeah, that's how I. That's yeah.
The point of this conversation is like that's we lose memory, and like now I like kind of remember it, but not in like the detail that you do. And like I said, that's why I want to have you on the podcast so that we can tell these old stories and document them.
I mean,
But I don't forget them,
one old
like
story I should say is that, and most people don't know this, but I don't think I'm like outing anything by saying it, is that after Gabby was back in California with the skunk and with the dog, he had a conversation the following year, I believe, with Greg, right? And Greg told him that the skunk had hermed on the dog, and the seeds from that he liked better than the dog itself. He thought they were so fire. He was running whole rooms of it, right? And so that was, in my opinion, maybe Gabby has a different idea, but like in my opinion, that was like what Gabby always told me was sort of the start of the let's see if we can cross the skunk and the chem together and get both the best of both strains into one strain. Like, can I get the flavor and the frost and the lime green from the skunk? Can I get that mixed with like the warm, fuzzy, potent, powerful feeling from the chem? And so Gabby started this Superdog project, um, which he actually started before I believe he started it before I met him. Um, but it wasn't, we didn't have reversals back then. So I think he had to take like a pollen source of some, I think it happened prior to me, but it was like, I think it was the Hawaiian or something like that. You mix something with the super skunk
well,
and
no,
then you get
it was a super skunk male because we had gotten seeds from Sensi.
from Sensi.
Yeah.
And then you said you took it to like F3 or something like that, maybe. And then you took male from that and you crossed it to the dog. And that was like the start of the super dog. And that was when we started like growing those out in numbers and picking males and females and doing like F generations and then outcrossing it to like every good clone we had. But at the time, and so this is a funny story. Uh, Gabby was telling me, dude, you can make so much seeds from a 6 liter. It would be worth so much more if we had an outlet for the seeds than even for the flower. And I shit on the idea because at the time in the early 2000s, like late 90s or whatever, the only people that had seed companies, they moved to Europe. There wasn't social media yet. There really wasn't like a way to like promote yourself, so and so. There really wasn't. We made all these. Gabby and I made all these seeds, and we literally gave mason mason jars worth to friends to try. Because at the time people didn't want seeds. People wanted clone onlys. We had friends that were willing to mess around with them some, but there wasn't really like, Gabby was like 10 years early on like the social media, making drops, like seed, like small seed culture and stuff like that. He called it back in 2001, 2000, 2002. I didn't see it because I didn't see a method for people like us to reach people at all. And so we made shit tons of seeds. I mean, I had mason jar after mason jar of seed. Gabby had bags and bags and bags. Gabby had bags of seed. Gabby had bags of seeded bud. Remember we had
Giant trash bags filled with
remember we
giant
had
seeds.
those metallic heat sealed metal bags,
Yeah,
right?
the foil bags.
The foil bags, you had those all sealed up, stuck in that fridge that popped, right? Most people don't know this. Another story is Gabby had a ton of the seed in this fridge freezer combo he had in his garage in Redwood Valley when he lived up in Mendo. And he went to, I think it was Jamaica, but I can't remember. He went somewhere for a couple of weeks in the middle of summer. And somehow his ex at the time, his lady at the time, she popped the breaker and didn't realize it, right? and that fridge sat in Mendo summertime heat for like 2 weeks before anyone even realized what had happened. And but yeah, I mean, we had, I don't know, even we had tens of thousands of seeds of the Superdog project, and just nowhere for them to go. I mean, the funny thing, people don't want to admit this either, but like when I had that skunk cut, because it wasn't the easiest thing to sell at the time, and it had a tendency to herm, I couldn't get people to back up that. I couldn't get people to back up the Mendo P. Most of our friends, they probably don't want to hear this, but most of our friends just wanted the one or two moms that they were currently cropping. They didn't want even an extra plant or two. They didn't want to hold on to stuff. And so one of the reasons why I lost that cut was because we couldn't get anyone to help us back it up.
Which cut?
The Super Skunk cut.
Oh yeah.
I didn't lose that cut until '09 when I got raided. The second bust. But nobody wanted to help me back it up. At the time, nobody cared about skunk terps. It was a Kush sour diesel world. That's what people wanted. People didn't want the super skunk. People didn't want, you know, it wasn't as potent as those other things. And so they just didn't care. They didn't care.
Hey,
And
we just reached a milestone. So I just want to thank everyone. We have over 300 viewers watching live right now,
oh,
and our last show, I think we got like 265, which that was a record. So I
I
thank you
almost
guys
lost the
all.
Mendo P, but
Oh my god.
luckily, so what's dumb is that house in Brook Trails where I got pinched at, like I had a collection of old moms there, and that was kind of really the majority of what I had there. They didn't even catch me with flowering plants, but they cut all. They were almost like more mad at me that all I had was moms. And some of the things that I had there were things that other people just didn't want to back up for me. And luckily, I had one friend. Who backed up the Mendo P for me that I was able to get it back from? Chris and Jen.
Oh wow.
He backed it up for me because I bitched that nobody would help me back it up at the time, And so he's like, "Oh, you can throw it in my mom room," and so I did, and it happened to be alive. So after I got raided and they cut a bunch of stuff down, I was able to recollect. But a couple things I was not able to recollect, like that skunk.
One thing to I want to say is that that Mendo purple,
Mm-hmm.
that to me is some of the most unique weed even today.
Yeah.
And I've never smoked a cross. And granted, maybe you know, I just haven't had access to some of the stuff that I know people have done some work with it, but I've never tasted anything like that strain. And for instance, like the 91, there's a ton of OGs that have that taste that I
Flavor,
really
yeah.
that I, sours. Whether this is it or not, there's a lot of herb that tastes like sour, but the Mendo Purple is such a unique taste, and
It
that's
makes me
why it's always going to be one of my favorite herbs ever. And on that note, I can't wait till we can get that out to everybody. And I
yeah.
can't wait till I can flower out some more of that shit too, because
It makes
what
me
a amazing head
wonder.
stash.
It makes me wonder what other unique terps and what other unique flavors that may have been more common in the past just got selected away from or got lost to busts or prohibition or accidents or divorces or fires or what have you, and because that was the luckiest shot in the dark. That was just some old 70s Mendo weed that this old timer gave me in seed form. And like that's it. That's all it was. And so it's like, and what's funny about it is everything you smoke, I don't think it's unique. Like that was the unique plant on earth that smelled like that, but it probably was something that survived. Like sometimes I think about it and I think in the 90s, there was a number of strains that like getting that pure rancid skunk nose wasn't uncommon. There was multiple plants that had it, you know, and now people are chasing it because there's variations of it, but it doesn't really exist. And people have come up and claimed, oh, I've got the RKS, or I've got the raw skunk spray, or I've got the this or that. People don't realize, you know, when you and I were joking about like Light Warrior or whatever, when I had that little house, not wasn't little, but when I had that red house in the eastern part of the Willits Valley,
Hmm.
when I was growing that skunk, that was before stores sold carbon fiber filters, right?
Okay, when was that?
Early 2000s.
No, that's not true.
Yeah, 100%.
No,
Dude, I
no,
had,
because I
but listen
sold
to me for a
carbon
second.
filters. I sold carbon filters
Listen to me for a second. I
when I worked
had
for Slavic,
one of those UAV
Juvenair.
Juvenair 12-inch. I like ran like the whole, like you're supposed to, like the 30 feet of 12-inch past the exhaust to give it time to mix and all that. And I would come home from working at your shop in summertime or something, and I'd park my car and I'd get out and I'd smell skunk and I'd be like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Like people
No,
don't realize how much of
again,
a bust it was.
I love you, Francis,
Mm,
but prior to me opening up the garden spout, when I worked at Hydro Depot, and this was, in the late 90s,
90s, yeah, where I met you. Yeah.
we sourced carbon filters, and they were actually made somewhere locally in Santa Rosa, but these carbon filters were being used um, for the aerospace industry,
Yeah,
not
they
even
just
just
weren't common.
they were really expensive, um, and but we did have them,
You
and
did have them.
we,
Well,
we,
let's just say
we
they
were one of
weren't
the first stores to
they,
sell them.
they
And
weren't they
so
weren't in common.
when we had the garden spout in Willits, it was accessible, just really expensive, and so you probably just didn't get it,
I
but it wasn't,
think that story I was telling, you were in Hopland,
right. But
maybe
we had the filters from when I was working in Roner Park before
running
Hopland,
park.
because like I said, I remember because they were made actually in Santa Rosa, and so we'd pick them up and but there was no can filters and no like 30 brands. It was like this one guy, he didn't know why, I mean, he knew, but
I
at
mean,
first
I
it was
just
like,
remember at
why
that
is,
house, the medium that I used to grow hydro was Light Warrior because cocoa hadn't. We weren't even selling bags of cocoa yet.
right.
It was still peat moss and perlite. And what grade was it? You know, you can use
So that's accurate, but there were some carbon filters. There was just, I mean, like a 12-inch carbon filter would cost you like, I think $1,500 or something like that.
maybe
It
that's why I didn't
was,
have
it
it.
was, yeah, it was just super expensive.
Anyway, my point is that a lot of the reason why people got rid of skunk is because it made the
It was a
outside of their
bust.
house smell like skunk, and it made it smell like a bust. And people like medical existed then, but so I'll tell one part of the story. So this part of the story I was telling where I was in jail, I was having this interaction with this cop, and because my ex-wife had cancer and because I had migraines, I actually had a medical card given to me from the Mendocino County Department of Health and issued to me by the local sheriff's department. And so if I got pulled over, you could actually call the sheriff's dispatch and they would tell the California officer that I was a registered medical patient through county health. I had a laminated card from the sheriff's department, okay, from Mendocino County Sheriff's Department and Mendocino County Health Department that allowed me to carry up to 2 pounds on my person. So I show this to the cop. I'm allowed to have this, right? I'll never forget this. This guy,
Not in Orange County.
he looks at the card, he calls the dude up. It's literally the sheriff's dispatch number. So you get the sheriff's dispatch. He comes back to me, he hands me back the card. He goes, hippies and AIDS-ridden faggots passed that 215 law, and we don't care for it in Orange County. You're still going to jail. And I was like, oh my God, he just said hippies and AIDS-ridden faggots. I'm definitely going to jail. And then within a few years, um, that county was having like cannabis cups hosted by freaking High Times. So there was a sea change coming, you know. They actually wanted to put me, they wanted to put me in like straight prison for like 3 years for that, Gabby. The whole 3 months that I did 6 months, but I got off in 3 with good behavior. That was because I had a medical card. You know, that was
They wanted
because
to, and that was in California.
that was in California. Yeah, I had a medical card, and not just like a script from a doctor. I had a script from a doctor that was vetted by county health, and then I was an active member of the county sheriff's department medical program. And he actually, Tony Craver was our sheriff back then. He actually shut that program down, because the DEA subpoenaed him to provide all of the medical patients' information to them that he had on file, and he burned all the files and shut the program down rather than giving them the names. He was pretty baller. He was pretty ballsy dude. You know,
Did he die?
I don't know if Tony Craver died. He was really
He said
old.
he was.
He was the sheriff before Tom Ullman. He was a long-term sheriff of Mendocino County. He retired, and then Tom Ullman became sheriff. And then there was this prosecutor, district attorney, Norm Vroman, that made Mendo the chillest place in America to grow weed. And he won re-election in a landslide, but 2 days before his re-election, he had a heart attack in his car. And yeah, so Tony Craver and Norm Vroman were the sheriff and the district attorney when you moved here.
Yeah, no, I remember. But you said he was, and so I was thinking you were
Yeah,
saying he
no,
had passed.
he retired. I mean, he was retirement age a long time ago. I mean, he might still be alive. I don't know. Like when you're a sheriff, you retire in your 60s or 50s, and then you get like 90% of your pension is like 90% of your salary or something until you die. So it's like he retired probably at 60 or something like that, and then Tom Ullman took over for a long time. But
Man, we
yeah, I
should have said.
literally had. I wish I still had it. I literally had a laminated card issued by the Mendocino County Department of Health and the Mendocino County Sheriff's Department, and it said that I was allowed per my medical card to carry this amount of weight. And if you had any issues, you could literally call the Mendocino County Sheriffs, and they would run my number and tell the CHP or whatever officer that I was actually, not only was I a medical patient, but I was registered with county and with sheriff. I wish I still. That was back when they gave you, like, remember the yellow zip ties,
Yeah,
and all the zip ties had a code on them or whatever, and they were issued by the sheriff's department themselves.
but like
That
you
was part
said,
of.
that didn't help you in traveling through
I was still in
orange
California. They didn't
county.
give a flying fuck. And so I thought to myself, honestly, I'm like that's the longest stint I did. But honestly, if I had to go to jail, like I was literally bringing. I've done plenty of stupid, shady stuff in my life, but I was literally bringing a glaucoma patient who was my best friend's aunt medicine, and that's what led me to like my longest stint, and Gabby picking me up. And do you remember that I had to? This is another story. I don't usually talk about this in public, but who cares? I was working for Gabby because I was under formal probation and I needed a real job, right? That I needed a paycheck, I needed a stable job, I needed to prove to my probation department. I even had to, do you remember? I had to have a card where I was a registered drug offender.
You had to
And
register yourself as a
as a
drug
drug
offender.
offender. And if a cop asked me for it and I couldn't produce it, that was a misdemeanor and a violation of my probation. So it made me feel like a sex offender. I had to carry around this laminated drug offender card so that cops knew that I was a shady bastard.
You told me another story about how, and I'm not remembering it right now, but I'm sure I remember when you tell it about how when they had to call me that they were trying to like violate your probation and say
Dude,
that
so I
you
was
didn't have a
at I
job
was
and
at I was at the shop, not the old one, the one that you built, right? On the south end of town there. And I get this call, and it's this dude, and he's like, "Is this say my full name. Is this friend, so and so? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, man, I'm really glad you answered. Yeah, I'm like, how? It's like, well, I'm down here with the probation department, and Mendocino County says that you've stopped reporting, and I was about to write an arrest warrant for you. And I was like, oh my God, don't do that, right? So Mendocino County had decided that I was non-compliant, but the only thing that saved me was everything that he had on file for how to find me was still the same. So my address that he had on file was where I was living with Heather.
Now you said Mendocino County said you were uncompliant. Was it Orange County?
So
Why would
when you
Mendocino say you're not compliant?
I don't know, but I was on probation with Orange County. But because I lived in Mendocino County did a courtesy of taking care of me for Orange, right? And so at some point, I don't know if it was government screw up or somebody bad at their job or whatever. Like the reason why he called me is because my phone number was the same. My address was the same. The job that I was at when he called the shop was the same. Like he called the shop. He's like, I need to prove that you're you. So he called the shop, and I can't remember who answered, but Daviana or Nicole or somebody like that. But he was like, put Francis on the phone. And then I got on the phone. He's like, oh, you actually are there. I'm like, yeah, freaking here Tuesday through Saturday, whenever to whenever. But yeah, they almost violated me. And I was on probation. I was on formal probation, I think, for 5 years, something along those lines. And then
And
I was off.
that's why Notsodog worked for us, because he had to.
I had to, yeah. And then
You
I was
liked it.
clean,
You liked
and
it,
it
right?
was good. It was good. And then
The
I was
boss was
off
a little bit hostile.
probation for 2 years, and then I got in trouble again, and then I was back on it for another few years. So it was occupational hazard growing then. When you do something every day and all that, every once in a while you might get wrapped up in some bull, you know. So, yeah, but I mean, it kind of really sucked. I couldn't leave the state without permission. I had to get written permission to leave the state. I was on formal probation. I had to check in. And I think what happened to me is I think the lady in Mendocino County was so not concerned because she normally dealt with like meth addicts and street people and heroin addicts and various troublesome that like some normal weed dude. She just talked to me and she's like, you have a real job, you pay rent, you live in a house, you don't really have any violence on your rent. Okay, I don't care about you. That was pretty
That's
much it. You're not a problem for me.
that was my experience too when I got probation. Was, and I won't tell the whole story now. I've told it before, but I got in trouble in Florida. But because I lived in New York, they let me transfer the probation. And for 6 months, I didn't even have a probation officer while I was waiting for someone to call me. And, you know, like the stupid kid I was smoking weed.
Yeah.
And they were, when I got called in to the probation officer, they totally could have tested me and violated me for smoking weed. And, went to the first meeting. It was like 6 months in with the probation officer, and I was like totally concerned. It was a serious crime that I got in trouble for. But when uh, when they when I finally saw her, she said, "So, do you use any drugs?" And I said, "Look, I don't use any drugs except for weed. I smoke weed." And she's like, "Well, I don't care about weed, and since you've been honest with me, I'm not going to drug test you." Like, she knew I wasn't
Yeah.
on like amphetamines or coke or anything
I
like
used to
that,
get tested, but the weird thing is that because I was a legal medical recipient, I was allowed to pee with THC in my system. Like, so here's a funny story. So before I left that night that you picked me up, right? They piss tested me as a baseline for future tests, right?
Mhm.
And the guy looks at me, he calls me up, uh, because you don't get the results then or whatever. He called me up and he goes, what's funny is he goes, you were in there for over 3 months. And I was like, yep. And he's like, you still tested positive when you got out. I hadn't smoked. It's not like, I mean, there was drugs in there, but it's not, I wasn't trying to like extend my stay or do anything dumb, and it wasn't like there was weed that I was into or whatnot. So I hadn't smoked in 3 months, 3.5 months or whatever it was. And I still popped somewhat positive. So I was allowed, when I got piss
When
tested, I
people
was
say that
allowed.
it stays in your system for a month, that's what they used to say, 30 days.
Yeah,
But
for us, it was over 90.
yeah, it's
Close,
deep
close to
in our
100. It
fat
was still, that
cells.
was lower. It was probably way lower, but it was still in there. And since I had a medical card for my issues, like I was allowed to possess, I was allowed to smoke, I was allowed to do all that. I was even allowed, I think when I was on formal probation up in Mendo, I was even allowed to have 25 plants.
Because you had medical.
Yeah, because I had medical.
Hey, a couple of things I want to say before we're done. So, because I want to kind of back to the topic, and then I want to open it up to some questions. In a few minutes, we'll take some questions from the live chat, everybody. So, I currently have what I call the original, which is the cut that's been in my circle, for
Mm-hmm.
many years. I have the Gabby Staten Island, which don't exactly know what that one is. I have the AJ Sour Philly cut. I have the AJ Sour from Purple City Genetics. I think they say 2004. They say that's the like original AJ cut. And then I have the Not So Sour. From uh, the ones that I have, so that's five. There's
Okay.
three that are clearly not the same. Okay, the AJ Sour Philly cut is not the original sour. It's got great sour terps. It's actually a prettier looking plant, but it's not exactly the same sour. There was a lot of plants that got the AJ name put on it. This one has been called that since 2005, so it is an older one, but it's still not the original cut, right? Um, then the okay, so the AJ is different from everything, and then also the cut that you have isn't the same as the ones that I have. The not so is different. To me, when I look at it, it's clearly different because it looks more like the Super Skunk than sour to me. And what I tell people is, and that's great. To me,
Yeah.
that plant looks better. Like, I'm glad that I've got it back now, and I want to flower it out. And the next time you have some flower, I want to smoke some because I think that one it's just beautiful. And so the original, the one that I call the original, and the Gabby, and maybe even the Purple City Genetics, I'm not sure. Those could be the same cut, you know. But out of an abundance of caution, I'm not only keeping all three of them, but I'm keeping them all with different names because they may not be the same. And if we can determine with genetic testing or some serious side by side growing that they are the same, then we can figure it out. But I think this is a question that I want to ask the chat, because okay, and I'm gonna call someone out by name even though they didn't call out me by name. JJ has a podcast which I actually really enjoy, even if it's, he's really monotone. He's like, the way he talks is, but I like his podcast because I like listening to his stories, right? And one of the things he did in his last, it's called the Sunday Roast. And he said that it's not about roasting people, but it's more about um, like roasting one, smoking one,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
But he decided that he was going to roast me a little bit. And he said that, he knows that I named this cut as the Gabby as a joke, but the joke is over.
Mm.
And like, so the first thing I ask myself is, why does he decide when the joke is over? You know, like, I mean, honestly, like, I'm not laughing at it so hard anymore. Like, but I don't know what to do. You know, so like, now this is my question for everybody. Now that it's been called the Gabby Staten Island for this period of time, what do I do? Like, if the joke is over, like, what am I supposed to do? Rename the clone again? Isn't that going to create more confusion? Like, so I just sent cuts to Doug Wing Wang, and
Mm-hmm.
he's growing it side by side with his. And
He's
it,
he's the guy supposedly that has the first AJ,
that's
right?
right.
Because he was growing sour for AJ to hustle way back when,
Right.
So supposedly the Win Wing, I don't know where the Win Wing name came from, but supposedly, and then there's discrepancies because there's AJ's. People have said that AJ bought his first cut from homies, and then he said that he popped it from bag seed. You know, so it's like I don't know. I mean, I I part of it. I think Diesel is a big enough family that we're basically stuck with where did you source it from? That's kind of where we're stuck with because there's so many
But like,
names.
you know, the thing about it is what I say is inappropriate. Okay, so the biggest difference is I don't know what it is. So it's not like I'm renaming a strain that I know what it is, right? I'm not sure of what it is. Like that, just because it's very similar to my original, it's not identical. And so the one thing that I've noticed about the Gabby Staten Island, and frankly, most of the plants that we've put through tissue culture, okay, and I've talked to some people about this, is so when you grow a Gen Zero plant from tissue
Can
culture,
I
and
can I
you,
interject really quick? Are we talking about just replicated tissue culture or meristem and then grow out?
I don't even think it makes a difference
Okay.
because what it is the hormones,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And those hormones are used in both.
Okay.
Okay, and so when you use these hormones on these plants, they actually get stored in the plant. That's what plants do, you know? And so when you take a Gen Zero plant and you plant it directly into the garden to flower, there's potential. Not that it's always going to happen, right? But there's potential for this plant to do weird things. And
Oh
you've
yeah.
told stories about how you got a whole bunch of Gen Zero clones and they all harmed,
All
and
all
right?
all
Okay.
we were growing probably 30, 35 different strains. We had 12 or something that were Gen Zero. They all hermed.
Yeah. So the thing is improperly using and using too much of the hormones can cause problems. But also when you grow the plants out and go from generation to generation, then these things go away. Like the growth will go back more to its normal, pattern, right?
Sure.
Because it kind of just grows out of those hormones being in there. And so when you grow the Gabby Staten Island sour diesel, you get, even though the plant stretches and grows, it has really tight internodal spacing and it wants to branch really heavy, even without topping, that I don't see from the original sour diesel. For
Hmm.
the original sour diesel, we used to have to top it,
Yeah.
okay, to get it to not just make one spear, okay. Um, so yeah, just looking at the way they grow, they don't grow exactly the same. But the terp profile, it is.
Okay.
The terp profile, that's why I said this reminds me of what I know about sour, because that's what I used to have, right? I can only relate to the sour that I used to have and smoke all the time, right? So when I said that this sour is the closest to what I used to have and even better than the one that I call the original, I'm basing it all on that, right? Um, but like I said, I just don't know. you know, and because they're, oh, the other thing is I get way high on this Gabby Staten Island, and I never used to really get high on this on the original sour diesel. You know, it could be that at the time I was smoking other weed that was better. Like
Yeah.
we had all the Kush strains there, and that's what I wanted to smoke, and that shit was so much more potent. And then the other thing that it could be is that I've aged and my body's changed, you know, and like, you know, it could
I
just be hitting me harder, you know. And the thing is I've grown the original one out so many times, but not recently. Okay, not recently. So now, like, I've been growing the Gabby one out, and seeing this one grown out, and smoking it, and it fucking gets me so high. It's so funny because the other day I smoked a joint of it, and I went somewhere, and somebody was like, "You're really high," and
oh
I
wow.
and I was like, "No, I'm just tired. You know, I was up late last night," and then I was like, "Oh no, you're right. I'm really high." So the you know the sour now it fucking hits me hard. The other thing I want to say is that I'm currently organizing test grows where we're gonna put them all side by side. Um, we've been selling this sour diesel box set as a way to encourage. This is like not crowdsourcing, but maybe
Yeah.
crowdsourcing information. If we get this box set out to a bunch of people, then they can grow them all side by side. And frankly, what the community thinks matters more than what I think, you know? So, yeah, I encourage everybody to be part of it and get the box set. I'm not going to like get into costs or anything, but I think it's a super good deal for what you get.
I
Um,
mean, I'll throw in a
go
funny.
to GabySI.com. Go ahead and then.
I'll throw in a funny story. There's these dudes. Gabby's still friends with one of them, but they'll remain nameless. And they were East Coast guys that blew up sour out by us. And they used to tell me that their favorite runs of sour, they would grow in these. I always called them bubble buckets, but you
The
know
water
the
farms.
they would grow in water farms.
So, by the
So
way, I mentioned them by name in the past, and we should say it again. It's Mike and Shimpei
okay,
because these
so
guys fucking grow a fuck ton of sour diesel.
so anyway, so they would grow in these water farms, which are essentially clay grow rock buckets that had drip, and they have a reservoir underneath them, and they just constantly drip water, full hydro, right? They would grow full hydro, general hydroponics, and they loved summer because they felt the nose came out the hotter the room got. So they sort of went contradicting to what a lot of people these days are trying, but they would love like an 85, 88-degree room growing in full hydro GH3 part. They thought that brought out the sour nose. And they were like the only people we knew that like looked forward to like the summer runs where everybody else was like struggling and trying to battle like the Mendo heat. And they would be all pumped because they felt like they were going to get more of that raw nose when their room was hot, you know. And so sometimes I think because diesels are so sensitive to environment, like if you're growing sour in a 75-degree room in living soil with like the highest end LEDs that are available on the market right now, like that's super different than like General Hydro water farms GH3 part and an 85 to 90-degree grow room with single-ended bulbs, you know, like of Hortiluxes or something like that. Like basically everything has changed. And so like people always talk about like it doesn't smell like I remember, but you probably are growing it in a way that the guy that you were buying the sacks from or whoever he was getting it from is not growing that way at all anymore. Because back in the 90s or back in the early or mid 2000s, they were growing with different lights, they were growing with different newts, they were probably growing with different grow systems. It was much more simple in that way. And I think that diesels are one of those strains that expresses pretty differently depending on what you do to it. And I'm not saying that's the way to get the true sour nose. I'm just saying that it's like literally so much stuff is different.
Can I give another analogy? A
Huh.
little bit weird one.
Uh,
Okay. So I'm not talking about poop here, right? But
oh my God. Okay.
did you ever smell a baby?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've had numbers of
Yeah,
them. Yeah.
exactly. Baby, like their skin smells really good.
Yeah.
It's like, right? But then how about old people that are rotting? Like the plant is old and it's just not like even if it's the original cut and even if we put it through tissue culture. Okay, so part of why I'm a believer in tissue culture is do it early. If you do it early, then you can preserve what you have, or you can, slow the aging of time, right? But like when we tissue culture a plant that is already 20 years old, we can take care of virus and clean up some pests and stuff like that,
30 in the
right?
case of sour. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not a fountain of youth, right? It's just a preservation tool, not a fountain of youth. And so shit's not the same as it was 30 years ago. I
And
had hair 30 years ago.
well, we
I
should
had
also
lots
say
of
this
hair,
too. So
so
this is an interesting observation. Um, we're the first generation of people that kept old clones. In previous generations, it was a from seed. You grew from seed. You didn't. If you found a killer pheno, you just figured you'd find it again in that seed, in that same seed line, right? Like so, starting in the late '80s, early '90s, and on, that's when people started to really preserve cuttings. And then obviously, like very few have survived, realistically speaking. But there are some that are quite old. You know, I can't see any comments, so I don't know what's
yeah.
going on.
So I'm basically going to say, let's take some questions now.
Let me grab my
And
iPad or whatever real quick and take a
I'll
leak.
read.
Talk for 30 seconds.
Okay. I was going to say I can read them out, but go ahead and take a leak. So, real quick, everybody, I've been watching Mr. Spliff of Cannabis, his podcast, and I became a friend of his. And I encourage you all to check him out at Mr. Spliff of Cannabis on YouTube. Um, I got him to tell his story, because his podcast is a lot going on it. And he did like 4 podcasts. I think you have to look under the live section of his thing where he told his story about like how he first experienced weed. And I found it so entertaining. I've actually watched it again. I've actually gone and watched it again. So when he sticks to his story, it's really great stuff. So I recommend everybody go check him out.
Who?
Mr. Spliff of Cannabis.
Mm,
Yeah. And he just said that I'm really good to him. He gave me the UK skunk.
the
Uh,
cheese.
the UK cheese.
Yeah, you had it
Exactly.
when I was at your house that day.
Yeah. I'm so excited about that cut. And he's also getting me back the cherry pie cut. So he's been super good to me. And sometimes his podcasts are a little bit just friends talking, and they're fucking around. But when he focuses on his story, it's really awesome, and a he does have a great story in history in cannabis. So that's why I was encouraging everybody to go check him out. We have this joke that he's really good when he's not being a fuckface.
Huh.
So whenever he starts getting off track on his podcast and talking about you know bathing his cat or something, I say, hey, stop being a fuckface. So
You read me what people
read
are
you some
saying.
questions. Okay.
Yeah, and
Does
we'll go from
anybody
there.
have any? Does anybody have any questions?
Because I am not seeing any comments.
Let's go back a little bit and see if there's any previous ones. Well, oh, you have to look on the live stream, not just the. Um, anyway, I'll read them to you. Don't worry about it, brother.
All right, read them to me.
There was a bunch of questions that I wasn't able to get to. So let me figure it out. In the meantime, I'm sure you can figure out something to talk about.
Oh man.
Your middle name is Gabby.
I
Speedwagon, send me a text message. I don't actually email anything. I just do it on a text message. So, or you can just email me. There's a link on my website. So, yeah, I'll make sure I take care of you. Oh, not a lot of questions. If you guys don't ask questions, we're just gonna either let it go or there's a bunch of questions that I couldn't get to during the stream, but now there's no questions here.
none.
Well, there were questions that I just, couldn't answer them while we were talking.
Oh, I
And
get it, dude. I
now there's
try
a
to
whole
look
bunch
at
of text.
questions whenever I do it like that, and it's also it's
So
bad.
here's a question. Why do old ladies smell like mothballs, lavender, and piss?
Oh my god. It's
No, I
actually
didn't
something
give
I
you the
worry
answer.
about as I age, right? Is I think people lose a sense of smell. And then I think old people like to get strong smells that they can perceive. Lavender might be one of them or whatever. And then to a younger person, it might seem overpowering, right? But to them, it just smells normal because their senses are degraded. And so they might not know. And so I have this fear as I age. I don't want my kids or my grandkids or whatever to be like, oh my God, he smells bad. Like, and I don't even know it.
So somebody asked, did we ever cross the Superdog to the Super Silver Haze? I don't think
No.
we did. Yeah. I think the Super Silver Haze became popular after we did our breeding.
Things, no, it was popular before that. We just weren't. I'll give a list. In addition to crossing the Superdog to a bunch of other Superdogs that we had selected personally, we crossed it to the Super Skunk, we crossed it to the Dog, we crossed it to the Maui, we crossed it to the Mendo P, we crossed it to this thing called the Warlock, we crossed it to the Black Domina, um, we crossed it to man, I'm trying to think. Basically, I think we even crossed it to some weird stuff that we had, like the Genius and the Apollo 11.
Says we lost Notsodog. You there, buddy? We lost Notsodog. It says that one of the questions that was asked was, what strain do we miss the most? Like, what lost strain? And I guess the strain that I think about every now and again is the Francine. That was the strain that I traded for the Super Skunk, the VA, the cut from Virginia, and brought it up to Greg and traded Greg that for the 91. And then I drove both those across country. And that Francine was a really great cut, but I was having problems with it molding because it was getting really thick. And the truth is that we were doing a terrible job back in the day um, of controlling the climate, and I think today with the tools and the knowledge that we have, we could have done a much better job um, with the Francine. And so that was a plant that I literally just tossed it, and so I regret that. Is it Super Dog or DAWG? LOL. It is DOG. Hey, Ran, we are currently flowering the Sour Diesel and a whole bunch of the cuts on my menu. You know, um, to be honest, I'm not in charge of the room, but it's at the same facility where I have my nursery, and so I'm getting to take a close look at everything, and so think like 4 or 5 different strains from my collection are going in there. Then hold on one second. Francis had to step out. Yeah. So was the Francine named after Natso? No, the Francine came before Natso. Um, when I first planted seeds, I named everything by female names. And so I had Francine, I had Michelle, stuff like that. Um, the Francine, I would say, was a strong indica strain, really compact and really thick buds. Um, the taste of it, it's hard for me to describe, to be honest with you, because it's not like anything that I have today, and I'm not very good at describing that. Um, hey, the make a Chem 91 box set, and I'll be the first to grab that one. You know, I'm giving the Chem 91 away currently. If you order anything on my website, GabySI.com, I'm just giving a Chem 91. I'm giving the cut that was held by VA. Um, so I have no plans of currently making a box set because I'm just giving the cuts away. Thanks, Jay Bird Watcher. I appreciate you all. I was really excited that we broke 300 and we still have over 300 people listening. So if you guys have any questions, hit me up. I'm interested to give the skunk cut to Gabby. Hold on a second. I'm interested to give the skunk cut to Gabby. Not so. The buzz is that skunk number one up and makes you move. I mean, send us a message and get us some information. Lots of people want me to grow their shit, and by shit I don't mean it derogatory, but I only have so much space to flower stuff out right now. I have like 10 to 15 Superdog seeds, but they don't germinate. So I got to do some embryo rescue on them. Super Flutch toilet in New York City. Yeah, I've told that story before. I'm glad you're celebrating your harvest with us. Okay, so no, the alien rock candy, um, it does not smell metallic. It smells more candy. So a question that I have, since you guys are slowing down on the questions, um, I think it's weird that people don't like my daughter. What's up? Okay, I'm gonna be done with this in a minute. You can get a snack if you want. Okay. Um, I think it's people funny. I find I think it's funny that people say I don't like tangy terps, or I don't like jack terps, or even I don't like candy or anything else. Let's just tell Francis. Francis is coming back, everyone. I don't have to do this myself. um, so people say they don't like these terps. And what I say is I love I love all the different terp profiles
I'm
that
back.
cannabis has. He's back. All
Sorry,
right.
my wife is my her vehicle was in the shop, and that was the dude. So I had to talk to him before he closed.
No worries. I'm glad you could take care of it. So we're changing the direction a little bit. We haven't gotten that many questions. So, and here we go. Aloha says, I don't like tangy terps. NGL. First of all, I'm too old to know what NGL means. What does that mean?
Not gonna lie.
Not gonna
Okay,
lie.
so I can talk about this.
And
So
Mr. Spliff just said tangy is evil.
so here's the deal. There used to be this long time ago. There used to be this stuff called Cali O, California Orange, right? And it had pure citrus terps, and it wasn't very strong. So it would occasionally get popular, and then people would get all bummed out at the high, and it would become unsellable. Well, then I think it was DNA with Tangy. DNA crossed Cali
Mhm.
O to a skunk type plant and came out with Tangy, and it was actually a pretty good growing plant. But the thing about citrus is it's kind of like terpenoline in the sense that it's very strong and very dominant terp. So when it's in there, it tends to pop a lot. And the one thing that made Tangy super popular was it kind of came out right around when the dab revolution started with all the nails and the dab rigs and the various stuff that started coming out, right? And all of a sudden you could make BHO that tasted good and was stronger. And Tangy really had a moment in the sun. And what happens to it, what I find is that most people tend to not like the high and the as much, and the flavor is so strong and so one note that it's sort of like you either love it or despise it. That's why I said terpenoline, like Jack Terps,
Mhm.
or the Durban Terp, or everybody calls it Jack. It used to be, if you're old enough, before Jack Terps, it was um, train wreck Terps type of thing. That's not citrus, but just like that type of strong flavor has a tendency to, either people are into it or they despise it, right? And I find there's only one citrus plant I really liked, which is that Tango that Tuna had. You know,
Hey, do you
um,
have your camera turned off?
no,
Okay, we can't see you.
you can't see me.
No, we caught a break.
Oh my god! All right, hold on.
Let me
Let me
see.
see.
Actually, let me check to see. No,
I
you
can
know
see.
what? You're there. I just can't see you on my Riverside app, but it looks like you are still there, so that's good. Unfortunate for us, so we got to look at you, but um,
No, I don't know. I tried to
I
flip it
see you now.
around.
I don't
You
know.
see me?
I'm having a little thing with the program, but
Whatever.
as long no, don't flip it like that. You can't do
Oh
that.
man, I
Now
can't
you
do
gotta
that. It's gotta be like this.
no, because now once you start the recording, you can't flip it because now you're sideways.
Oh my god. Okay, like
So
this.
turn it the other way. Yeah, like
Okay.
that. You got to
Okay.
stay like that.
I got to stay like that for this time.
Yeah, or else
So
it's
that's
freezing.
that's what I think. I think orange citrus terps go in and out of style because they're really strong and they're very noticeable and they're very identifiable, like whether it's lemon or it's orange or whatever, and then people get burned out on them. It doesn't seem to be any smoker that's an older smoker that I know. I don't know a single person that like would have that as their primary smoke
Well,
daily.
I don't want it to be my primary smoke either, but that doesn't mean that I don't think it's beautiful.
I
And
mean, I think
like
it's
like my head stash, I want comprised of as many different flavors as possible, and I definitely want some citrus, some tangy in there, um, as part of
I
it. And
I have a tendency, if it comes to citrus terps, I like it if there's a certain creaminess to it rather than I just sprayed cleaner on my tongue. Like the ones that lean really astringent type of thing, I have a harder time with those. It's not like I can't smoke it, but it's definitely not something I want to grab all the time.
so what I'm doing here, um, so I get concentrates from Earl Hill. They're pretty much the only place that I'll ever buy concentrate from because I really think
Okay.
that they do the best work. And I have some Tangy from them, and it's super powerful, particularly in a concentrate like you're talking about. And Leah, my lady, she finds it offensive. Like it's so much. So I hear that point, and also I can also hear the point about it being one note. So what I do with this cart, first of all, I'm running really low on this stuff. I maybe have like 7 grams left from stuff that I've been saving for like 5 years. And so now what I do is I mix it. And this is blueberry muffin with, I'd say it's maybe 70% blueberry muffin with 30% of the tangy mixed in. And I can still taste the tangy and I love it. And so what about just like mixing a joint with it so that you can, and Like I think we
We
used to
used
do
to
that.
we used to mix
Call
we
them
used to mix
salads,
men we used to
right?
mix Mendo P with all kinds of stuff.
Mendo peas, I think you could say it's similar. Like the taste is, um, it's so loud, and I don't want to call it one note. I think that's harsh, but it's got a very. I lost your volume. I'm not here. Are you talking,
I'm
Francis?
not talking.
Okay, because I'm
I'm just
looking at the
listening.
skins. Um, yeah, and the Mendo Perps isn't really that potent, but like you said, mix some Mendo Perps with some OG in a joint, and now you have a flavor. You know, you have a flavor that doesn't exist.
Yeah,
So
essentially.
yeah, and my point is, okay, if you're the type of person that like you're just gonna buy a little weed and smoke it, and I get it. You like OG or you like sour, and that's what you're gonna get. But like I said before, I like my collection to have a wide variety of types of terpenes. And so like when I'm at a gathering and I'm um we can smoke a whole bunch of different stuff. I think it's more enjoyable that way
One of
than
the
to just like
yeah,
smoke one joint after another of the
I'm just
same herb.
you can get if you especially if you are unfamiliar with the herb, or you're not it's not part of your daily drivers and you smoke 5 or 6 different kinds of weed at an event with someone or at a gathering or at a friend's house, you definitely will get higher. I mean, one of the things that I like about herb over alcohol is that alcohol is kind of like it's all about like how potent it is and what your tolerance is and how much you weigh, but it's essentially the same buzz, right? Where with cannabis, it's like, an OG Kush buzz is vastly different than a haze buzz. It's vastly different than the Mendo P. It's definitely different than the diesel. So there's a variety of effects, and it also doesn't seem to affect everyone. I was going to mention this earlier when you were talking about it, but like when I first met you, I would say it's fair to say that you were pretty high strung, and
I,
so
I still might be.
you liked herb that was other people might have found crushing. You liked herb that calmed you down, and if you smoked stuff that made you too up, that was not comfortable. So you gravitated towards the chems and the cushes and the heavy hitters and the stuff that other people might find like a heavy downer. And for you, it just made you normal. But like if you smoked haze or something like that, you'd be like crawling out of your skin, and it would make you uncomfortable. So some of it is the human involved, you know?
So I want to tell you something,
Hmm.
and this is why I love that we're doing this podcast together. Um, you said that in the podcast that you used to do with someone else that'll remain nameless,
Yeah.
and I think I made a response video to that, or it was part of a video that I made, and that's actually what got me started with podcasting. Okay, because you were telling that story about it making me come out of my skin. I don't remember that it was ever like that. I think
No, I mean
that's
you weren't
kind of
freaking out.
like
It's just like it
but
wasn't
like
the
you
buzz you were
described it like
wanting.
that. And so the point is like you did that, and then I was like, I got to make a response video, and I made this response video that said, my response to Notsodog and Crybaby, which by the way, wishing Crybaby the best.
I do
Um,
as well.
um, but yeah, so that's what actually got me like to say I got to have my own podcast because I didn't watch yours live. I don't think I was like watching it after the fact, and I'm like literally like screaming at the screens that like
Oh my God.
I wanted to be part of the conversation. I have to say this like um because I'm being honest, I was a little jealous of Crybaby because I was like, man, if Francis is going to do this podcast again, I want it to be with me, because
Well,
so like,
so I'll say that
and
back
we
because I
weren't
told
talking that much, so it's not
no,
like
I told you this
just
the other day, but it was like I kind of felt like when I started podcasting, not that I'm unique or anything like that, but I felt like a lot of
you're unique.
podcasts were sort of like um infomercials, for lack of a better term. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's like, I'm a breeder. This is my backstory. This is what I'm up to. This is why my beans are cool. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of there's a lot of that, people telling their stories. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I was like, I had this idea of like, I don't know, the hundreds of hours that you and I spent on like smoking weed on a couch together with various friends talking shit. And I was like, man, what if I just tried to bring a little bit of that vibe of just like herb smokers trading stories, telling funny tales, sitting around, shooting the shit. Like, we would, like, I mean, this might age us or whatever, but like you would tell a story and then we'd grab up like one of the old catalogs and we'd flip open to whatever page and start reading about whatever. You remember there was that thing about the NL5 haze in Neville's old catalog where it would like
That would
he had
make you
that
piss
line.
and shit yourself.
Yeah, like the bowel movement thing, and you just love that they put that in as a warning. And I just wanted to bring a little more of like the natural, like cannabis enthusiast chat. Not that origin stories aren't cool, and not that people don't want to hear people talk about their past and how they got into canna and what they did and what they grew and what they encountered, but like that's not the totality of it. Like what if we were what if we a lot of it was just not pitching anything but just talking shit back and
Well,
forth.
when when I started my podcast, first of all, it might have been insecurity, like thinking like, this is, I don't have a chance of being successful here. But I was like, I'm gonna do this for myself, and then if anybody else likes it, then great, And like today, when I asked you to tell the story about when I um, picked you up at jail, it wasn't like it's just because I want to document our story, as
I
as
was
soon as
super.
possible before things change from I just don't prefer um, I don't prefer sativas to they make me crawl out of my skin.
Well,
The story the
what's
story changes over time.
what's funny about that jail story is I haven't been as soon as you I wouldn't smoke. I should say this. I wouldn't smoke with Gabby until I got out of Orange County itself, and I have never been back. Even when I would
Ever.
go down,
Not
no,
even to Disneyland.
even when I went down to like San Diego to see like the wife's family and stuff,
You
I
go
I
around.
did a map. I went around. I have not been back there. They betrayed me. I was like, "Fuck you! I'm not. This is not my part. This is like the Oklahoma of California. I'm not going back. No, So I have not been back to Orange County since. Did I get out in '04? I can't remember. '04, I think maybe it was. I haven't been back since '04. I drive
Wow.
around it. I take expressways explicitly. I do not drive through it. I don't go through Orange County. I haven't stepped foot. I don't go to the gas station. I am not going back there. They,
That's the way I feel about Nebraska.
yeah.
I had a situation in Nebraska when I was driving across country.
So did I.
That yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that I didn't even have any weed.
Me either.
So I'll tell this story. Um, Driving through Nebraska, we're in Lincoln, Nebraska, and my Volkswagen bus was like broken down, and like we're like getting parts from a junkyard to try to like fix my van, and just to put it into perspective, I think this was 1990, right? And trying to go to I think like Cal Expo shoreline shows, and so we go to a supermarket, and you know, first of all, had no weed because we had driven so far across country, we had smoked it all already. And I'm in a van with like Volkswagen van with like 6 or 8 people, So like even if we had more weed, we would have smoked it all before then, right? But so we go into a supermarket, and I have like a whole cart filled with shit, snacks that we're buying and stuff, and we're in the produce aisle, and I try a grape, right? Just see if it's good. Take one grape. I have a cart full of groceries, right? So I'm continuing, and the grape was no, by the way, the grapes were no good, so I didn't buy the grapes, right? And a few minutes later, the fucking cops are there, and they, they take me away from like the shopping, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Yeah, you've been accused of shoplifting." I'm like, "Shoplifting?" I was like, "I haven't even left the store yet. How how could I steal anything? I haven't left the store." And they were like, "Well, the store manager said you were trying the grapes." And I was like, "Oh." I was like, when I was like, my parents and my grandma, they taught me when you go to the supermarket, there's certain foods you could try and there's certain foods that you can't try. Like, see, it's good. A grape is a pretty common thing that, people will try a grape before they go and, buy some. And I was like, "I'll buy the grapes." So, like, no, the store manager wants you to leave. And I was like, "So I have all this food, and they don't want me to buy it?" And they were like, "No." And it was because they didn't like us. I got some water. They didn't like us dirty hippies in their store.
Yeah.
It was just that.
People don't
So,
realize that um, people didn't like people that looked like visible hippies. There was definitely large parts of the country that were like, leave.
anything else you want to talk about, or
I
anyone
might
else
be
have a
talk.
question?
I might be talked out. If you've got questions to shoot, shoot questions. Otherwise,
We're gonna say
I
goodnight.
can say goodnight.
Let's see. We'll give it just a minute. People try grapes. It's normal. Not in Nebraska when you're in a van of hippies that maybe needed a shower.
So I'll tell one short story.
I'll get
I
some
was
water because Michael says I look thirsty.
I was driving from California back to Chicago to see my parents, probably for Thanksgiving or something like that. And I drove through. It wasn't Lincoln, but I was driving through Nebraska because on the the 80, that is kind of the main interstate that you would take if you go through the middle of the country to get from Chicago to California, goes through Nebraska, and it's really long. Nebraska is like a 6 or 7 hour trip to get through it. It's a big state, and it goes right through the long part of it. And I got pulled over for speeding, even though I was going like 4 miles an hour over the speed limit or something. And once they saw that I had California plates, I had a California license, and I had a weed bust on my record. So they were convinced that they had got someone. So they made me drive with them like right off the expressway. And there was like this DEA warehouse that they drove my car into with me. And I had to sit while they interrogated me. And dude, they tore my car apart. I mean, I'm talking, they imaged my gas tank. They put cameras on those like flexible cameras. They put them down like my door, like through the window, and like looked around to make sure I didn't have anything. They disassembled my passenger side seat, my back seat. They took apart my paneling looking for money and weed. It took them like 2.5 hours, dude. They ripped apart my car. And then when they didn't find anything, they were so mad at me. And I was like, honestly, you fucked me. I told like you. And so they basically got so mad that I wasted their time. Okay. That they put me back in the car, and they were like, you need to get out of our state now. Right now, granted, realize they didn't put my car back together. So like I'm missing like the interior paneling on the dash, and my interior panels are gone, and like there's all these bolts, and my seats are disengaged, and I had to drive home, and I got pulled over in Iowa. again. California plates, huh? You got any weed in the car? And I was like, dude, I already went through the checkpoint. Look around. I'm like, my car's been ripped apart. It looked like it was from a junkyard. And I had to drive home. And the first 2 days I was home, like I had to figure out like how to put my car back together. And it wasn't like there was a manual. And it wasn't like all the various washers and the bolts and the screws and the different things that click together. They were just laying on the ground in my ride, and I had to like put my vehicle back together. But if I would have had money or illegal substances on me, they absolutely would have found them because they did the most thorough. Like they had a whole thing, and I guess like on the 80 in Nebraska, there's various places where they have DEA checkpoints, where they have a warehouse with every imaging, searching, break apart a car tool, whatever imaginable, and they ripped my thing apart, ripped me apart. But I didn't have anything. I was literally going home to see my parents. I had like a bank card and I don't know, $1,000 in my pocket or something. No, I didn't even have substances because when I got home to Chicago, I had friends that it was like I had papers and bowls and sack of weed waiting for me. I didn't need any, you know. But yeah, I was like that. They are not friendly at all.
So Vixen grows. Yeah, I want to do a show with you soon. I literally called Francis an hour and a half before we did this and was like, "Hey, do you want to go live?" So I'm just
It's
having a
not
problem.
planned. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a problem having a problem planning things just because I'm so busy. But please post in the chat your podcast info so that I can share that with everyone. So
Yeah, and if it's cool. I mean, I just hopped on randomly to fucking chit chat, dude. So we can pop off and chat later, or another time or something like that. We can say goodbye to everybody. It's fine. It's a school day. I have kids with needs. I'm sure.
okay, here goes a question. So okay, Genetic asked, why don't we sell them clones as hemp? Um, that's what we do. So yeah, the Chem 91 I think takes like 64 days. If you know, I would say the longer you can take it, the better. But because it has such a hard time eating, it's common that the plant would even die before it was finished.
I like it as close to 70 as you can get it. I do have some tuna really liked it at 55 days, which I think is preemie, and it even has preemie white hairs all over it then still. But he preferred the buzz
Well, it's funny
to
that
it.
you say
I
that because Ben used to harvest it early because it would test higher, and he was
Yeah,
doing it in the licensed market.
that was a big deal. So I remember that whole story. He was taking it 68, 70 days and giving it to Harborside, and it was testing like 17 to 20%. And they
Right.
told him that for top shelf, he had to get his numbers up. And that's actually kind of where the 56-day headband came from, is because he started growing plants that he was familiar with and then cutting a branch at 48, cutting a branch at 52, cutting a branch at 56, cutting a branch at 60, and then sending them all in for testing and figuring out when the plant had the highest arc of testing. And so if you took the Chem 91 at 54 days, it would test like 29%, and they loved it. So he started taking it at 53, 54 days, and he would get an entire extra rip a year growing dog, because obviously the difference between 53 days and 70 is like 2 weeks. So you add that up on quick turnovers, and it adds up to like a whole cycle. And the headband cut that got renamed, the renamed OG, it tested highest at mid 50s. And so if you're selling to markets that require highest, you might not be harvesting it when the eye test and when the smoke test is the best. You might be pulling it when the numbers come in the best, because the numbers are what gets you the higher number. You know?
You know what I was thinking about, Francis? I don't know if you want to talk about this now or at all. Are you still there, buddy? You there, Notsodog?
Yeah, I got a call. I actually probably have to
Okay,
go.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm here, but I
Well,
probably have to go.
okay, go ahead. I'm gonna stay on for
I'm
a
gonna
little bit longer.
leave, but I'll leave it open so it uploads.
Okay, yeah, great. Do that. Alrighty, I'm looking through some of this before I let you guys. Speaking of Ben, have you asked him about our sour yet? I have not asked him about your sour yet, sour maid. Me and Ben live a few miles from each other, and we've been trying to hook up, and it hasn't been easy, just due to schedules. I hope to have him on soon too. There's the Vixen Grows at Grow Me Talk podcast on YouTube. I'll put that up again. Everybody, give them a check out. I checked them out. I like what they're doing. And again, I really okay. So yesterday I listened to the Mr. Spliff of Cannabis when he has the My Story is what it's called on the live, and I think it's great. So I'd love it if you guys went and checked out his YouTube channel. Of course, when you're done listening to every one of ours, yeah, give him a listen to. He's got some good shit, and encourage him to not be a fuckface. That's an inside joke. I tried to go, but you guys are just too fun to listen to. Thanks, Motorhead. Actually, Mr. Spliff is a legend. Um, okay, let's talk about a legend. Because I've been called a legend before, and I'm like, what the fuck? I wish Notso was here now. I'm already feeling really alone. Mr. Spliff is really comfortable doing this by himself. In his video, when he talks about his story, he literally just start. It's like he's reading it, but he's not. You can tell. Um, so, but for me, I'm definitely. I guess I prefer to be a sidekick, believe it or not. Or I just like to have a partner. But one thing I wanted to talk about is like, when did I become an OG? Like when did I become legendary? Or, when does anyone for that matter? Because like, I remember when we had the garden spout, there was OGs that would come into the store. Like, for me, I'm not an OG. An OG is like the people that were there before me. And I know I've told the story already about how Capulator called me an OG when we met. Um, but yeah, I just think that okay, so a legend doesn't have to be truth, right? So I don't want to be a legend because that doesn't mean anything. What I want to be is legit. I want people to be like, yeah, Gabby's legit. He sells legit cuts. He does good business. He's not going to ghost you, if something shows up dead because of too long in shipping or anything like that. So, yeah, I don't want to be a legend. Okay, and so I'm not religious, but my family history is Jewish. And my grandma used to always tell me to be a mensch. And be a mensch means be a good guy, be a good man, do uh, do good deeds, and just be good. So um, that's what I want to be. I don't want to be a legend. I want to be a mensch. Thanks, Terps. I appreciate it. Yeah, so Johnny Wheels, he was friends with the Weasel, and I met him through the Weasel, and we smoked a bunch of weed together. And rest in peace, Johnny Wheels. Man, I hate to admit it. Oh, where's the guy here that somebody says he's getting older and his mind. Okay, Rob. Rob said, I'm getting older, my body ages, but my mind doesn't. We need that alien Earth thing. Yeah, unfortunately for me, my mind and my body are aging. And I know that I'm forgetting things, and that's why I want to do these podcasts and document my story, you know, with people like Notsodog that can tell me stories about how I bailed him out of jail. I swear to God, when he told me this at first, I was like, what the? He's like, do you remember when you came and picked me up and bailed me out of jail at midnight? And I was like, no, I don't. But then when he told me the story, like, for me, I guess it wasn't that big a deal. Like, I was just picking my buddy up. Like, my buddy needed to be picked up. I picked him up. Not a big deal. But for him, it was like, I was the guy that picked him up from jail at midnight, And so, like I said, I want to share more stories um, with Notso. We have many. So, what does the true sour diesel taste like, taste notes wise? I think it tastes like the Gabby Staten Island sour diesel. I'm sorry, I'm just kidding, but the reason why I said that is because I'm not very good at describing terps. Um, and sour diesel to me smells like sour diesel. You will be my co-host for at least one podcast, Vixen Grows. We'll make it happen. Said, did you know Eddie with the milk truck and Josh and Brad in New York City? No. Yeah, my diet needs some improving. Um, so, because I'm open on this podcast and admit shit, I have a serious addiction to Coca-Cola, and I've tried to get off the shit like multiple times. I even used to post like 20 days with no Coca-Cola, and then all of a sudden I'll go to a taco truck and they have those glass bottles there, and it's like I'm off the wagon. So yeah, I have a serious problem with Coca-Cola. Besides that, I think my diet is decent. Um, but I got to get off that stuff. I know it's poison. Thank you, Ganja. My site is GabySI.com. I probably should have done a little bit better job of letting you guys know that more often, but I was just having fun talking with Notsodog. But definitely, I would appreciate the support. Coming up on the end of the month, that's always appreciated. Rob, I swear to God, that's what it said in the um, not bowel movement. I think it said like loss of bowel control. Yeah, Ganja, go to GabySI.com and anything you get a free 91. So, um, so that everyone, just so that everyone knows, like I'm giving away the 91 because it was so hard for me to get it. I mean, maybe I made it harder than it had to be. I probably could have gotten it from other people, but I wanted to get it from VA because I knew he had the legit one. And to be honest with you, I hadn't talked with Greg for years. Like I just saw Greg recently and I gave him back, or I gave him the Chem 91, like his cut that came from him in tissue culture. And I got to return it to him and I was pretty proud of that. But yeah, I didn't have it for so long, and I just feel like this strain was gate kept so much. And then when I made the original post, so many people reached out, and now I have like more copies of the 91 than anyone, and you know what? Even though the one from Smash Hits and that guy from Maine and the one that I got from VA, they're probably all the identical cut, right? But I'm keeping them. Oh, and Farmer Joe, um, I'm I'm keeping all of those until I can prove, which ones are the same or different. I'm not going to get rid of any of them. You know, it's a it's a burden for sure. I have, let's see, I have the finest cut, which we're suspecting is not the correct one. Um, my brother-in-law just grew some, and it doesn't look like it. It has chem qualities, but it's obviously, I think, chem cross. Don't even need to do genetic testing to prove that out. Then I have the one that came from VA. I have the one from Smash Hits. I have the one from that guy from Maine, which he held it from Greg forever. Then I have one that someone says is the legit cut that they've held it forever, asked me to not disclose their name or where they got it from. Um, but anyway, so many people reached out and gave me this cut. Nobody asked me for anything. Oh, by the way, Greg arranged it so that that guy from Maine sent it to me. When I made that post about Jason, Greg actually thanked me. You know, he's not thrilled about the fact that his cut is called the VA cut sometimes. So, he's like, thank you. And he's like, hey, I want to get you the cut. And so I just felt like so many people had given it to me that it didn't feel right to just put it on my site and sell it. But I didn't want to continue this gatekeeping. And so I've done I've done a bunch of giveaways where, you don't have to buy anything. You just like register on my website your name, and then I would have a drawing and pull names out. I tried to do some benefits, which, by the way, I think we're missing another live show that I wanted to see. The Brian, I'm gonna take a look real fast. I might even get off to watch that thing. The guy that says that Piff Coast ratted him out. So he's actually doing a live. Let me see here. I don't know how to find it. Maybe it's over already. But I'm sure that'll be on so you can watch it again. But anyway, I lost track. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you're vaping Earl Hill products. You get a little distracted. So we're talking about that I'm giving away the 91 with free with every purchase. So I'm giving the 91 for free with every purchase as my way of thanking people. But I also want to give it away. And I've done, like a few different things. I also want to sell it for charity. And so the thing that I was thinking about is this Brian, I forget what his account is. It's Bryote Ugly. I was like, hey, we can auction off some Chem 91s, and then he gets all the money. That way, like, I'm using it as a tool to help people that need stuff. I also offer to do it for Farmer Joe. So the problem I have is that I can't talk about any of this stuff on Instagram because, like, my shit's so under attack. I don't want to lose my Craft Growers Network. So I'm having a hard time promoting these, like, charity sales that I'm doing. So, yeah, go check out his website, his Instagram pod. It's a weird. It's not like a really viewed podcast that he was on. I think it was just on Instagram actually that they just like went live. But yeah, I can get the info for you guys so that everybody can watch it. It's on the at 6LMEST 2020. That's the guy at 6LMEST 2020. And I think there's a link here. Let me see here. Yeah. Let me see. Yeah, I think it's over because it was gonna be like 6. I guess it was 6 to 7 East Coast time. So sorry that I distracted you guys. That is probably more important. Um, yeah, so I do want to do giveaways. So like a certain amount every week. I want to give it away randomly, and I want to sell it for charity. So like if people don't want to wait till they win one, um, then they can buy one for charity. But yeah, I don't know what you guys think about that. But and so like now that my Instagram accounts have been taken down, it's been a little harder for me to do this. I did it on Overgrow. So basically, I've done like a few things, like just trying to give them away on Overgrow, like sign up for Overgrow. I mean, I guess I asked people to pay $10 a month to Overgrow to help support them. Um, but yeah, I haven't been able to give them away in a while. So make some suggestions on how I should do it, and I'm up for it. Just don't say that I should just send it to you. Let's find a creative way to give away the 91 and do good. Um, yeah, I want to TC your kosher Kush. It's one of my favorite fucking Kush strains. So Mr. Spliff has a bunch of fucking old school shit. You guys gotta check them out. Give it away, give it away, give it away now. Oh man, West. Okay, Western Main Mang. Okay, you did just ask me to give it to you after I said not to. But the way you wrote it, hey Gabby, I need a miracle every day, you're tempting me. So let me ask you a question, Western Main Mang. Would you be willing to make a donation, to Brian or to Farmer Joe, and then get one that way? And by the way, so what we're asking for is $200 plus you send me the shipping. So that all goes, the $200 goes directly to them. So if you're up for that, we can make it happen. That's funny. That's nice. I'm poor, but I give pot to homeless and change sometimes. The sours are historically very hard to S1. Not impossible, but we are going to try. So, what do you think, Western Maine? You want to? How about this? Let's use this as an opportunity to. Oh, I even think I've got. There might be one for Mr. Spliff of Cannabis. So if you want to send Mr. Spliff of Cannabis a couple $100, um, because he's having some hard times as well. He's not going to say it anymore, but um, he's having a hard time. So if you guys want to buy a Chem 91, you can send Mr. Spliff the money, and yeah, we can help him. He's deserving for sure. He's giving me a bunch of epic shit, and then he's like, you know what, Gabby? He's like, I want you to have the kosher Kush too. So yeah, let's keep Mr. Spliff going. All right, let's keep it going, people. Kombucha? I cannot drink kombucha. Bronco fan is an American hero, lip shuggy life. I don't know what that means. Ganja says, I'm homeless and give weed to the potless. That's a good one. Gabby, any interest? Why is this moving away? Um, yeah, I want any Superdog crosses I can get. I lost all my genetics in the fires 2017. All my seeds. um, burned. That's why we're doing it again. Alrighty. If you want to get your comments, this is the way to do it. Gabby is turning into the Willy Wonka of herb. Great to see such positive vibes going on. Um, thanks, Dank Shredder. Dank is a test grower of mine. Um, the only rule is that he has to just be 100% honest and just post about it. But I've sent him some strains recently, and he's test growing it. And the reason why I'm having him do it is he was growing other stuff of mine that he purchased, and he did such a great job documenting it. It was the alien rock candy. So he was posting pictures of the alien rock candy clones that he purchased from me, and it generated interest, So now I've got him testing out a few. I don't remember what I even sent you, brother. Why don't you comment in the chat what your test growing? I think you're growing. I can't even remember what I sent you, but yeah, you did a good job on that alien rock candy. So I want to see what you can do with the other stuff. Ghetto, thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate you. You know, I've I've done stuff like drink bubbly water instead of Coca-Cola, and like I said, every now and again, I I just fall off the wagon, and then I'm right back on it. Yeah, all my seeds burned. Oh, like I said, Dank, you really helped me out, and so I appreciate it. I want to show thanks to you, and I'm gonna just say this: we're gonna keep it going. Like you keep documenting stuff, and I'll keep sending you more shit. So he's got the blue Andes, the Lance, and the skunk piss. And so, bro, um, at my nursery, we also have a flower farm where we're testing a bunch of the stuff, and they did the blue Andes and the Lance there, and it turned out amazing. So the Staten Island chem is from somebody else, and it doesn't even come from Staten Island as far as I'm concerned. Um, I forget what the name of the guy is. I believe he died. Um, but I have no idea who he was, and I don't believe he was part of the Staten Island crew. So we are flowering out the Mass Super Skunk right now. We just put it we just transplanted it from clones to 1 gallon pots, and I'm flowering it out for the first time to verify that it is what I really believe it is because of the source that I got. But yeah, so I'm flowering it out, and then we're gonna do some breeding with it, hopefully. Or if it turns out to be what I think it is, then we're gonna breed with it. So I'm going to be getting, a lot of his collection. We're gonna be adding them one by one. I'm gonna bring them in one by one and release them, and so I think White Widow shit. To be honest with you, like he was pretty weed, but to me, terp profile, nothing desirable at it. I mean, and I can only speak of the weed that was given to me as the Widow, but I didn't like it. Mr. Spliff says I'm a total mensch, and I appreciate that. That's what I want to be. I'm gonna check this out. I just got a message from somebody saying this is what the sour diesel looks like day 43. I don't know. Can you guys see that? I think it's too hard. But I used to just post all this stuff to Instagram and share it with you guys, and I can't do that anymore. It's fucked up. But yeah, people have really been loving the Gabby Staten Island sour diesel, and yeah, Trey, I I absolutely am going to do a show with Mr. Spliff. I was thinking that I was going to do it on his channel first, just because I really want to help build his channel, and I thought that that would be the best way to do it, is by, you know, bringing some of my viewers to his channel instead of, you know, the other way around. But yeah, he's going to be invited to do this podcast as well. We've been talking about it. Alrighty, guys, if you guys don't continue to ask me some good questions, I'm going to just say goodbye. Yes, I'm threatening you. Do you have Cat Piss 707? First of all, Cat Piss 707, do you live in the 707? Because if so, we should smoke some weed together. Gabby, do you have any knowledge of those mid-80s Buddha strains? I do not. I started growing in 1991. I'm on X, but it doesn't do shit for me. Hey, if you guys are on X, follow me. You can find me at Gabby Staten Island. Um, yeah, I don't get much traction there. Let me make sure I gave you my correct X log on, if it's GabySI or what. I am, oh, at Gabby SI Clones. That's the one that I'm using the most. At Gabby SI Clones. And I did post some pictures and videos of some client grown sour diesel recently. Hey, that grow shop in Queens off the BQE, that was, it used to be called Staten Island Hydro. And then when they opened up in Queens, I don't remember what they called it, but hydroponic garden centers. And that's where I bought my lights on this place in Staten Island. But that guy is a legend. His name is Ross. And I want him to do the show because I think he's got a great story, including he went through Operation Green Merchant. And he's like, nobody wants to hear my story. And I'm like, yeah, I think people want to hear his story. Somebody said something then. So I got a skunk piss. I thought you were talking about skunk piss. That's why I put that on. I don't know much about the grape ape. I mean, I've seen the flower. Gabby, tell your story about your neighborhood in Brooklyn that had her plants in the window. I mean, I told the story already, but I was growing in an apartment for 9 months, and in the next apartment over, they had plants in the window that I never knew. I didn't know that they were there. I don't know how I never noticed it, but I made her take them down eventually, like, because I never even talked to her. And then one day she knocked on the door while I was harvesting. I was like, "Hey, can I get a joint?" And I like pulled her in, and she saw everything. And then she's like, "I'm growing too." And I'm like, "Really?" She brought me into her place, and she had a plant in the window, like to the street, where if the cops saw that from the street and they came up the stairs, because the stairs would zigzag up, they wouldn't know if it was my place or hers. So spaces. I got to do some spaces. All right, I'll try it. Natso has some good stories. Like I said, I really. First of all, again, I want to say a big shout out. Um, Hold on one second before I shout out. Yeah, I'm sorry. Crybaby. Big shout out to Crybaby. Hope he's doing good. I don't know what this is in reference to. You wouldn't be able to smell her over yours, lol, but I still wanted to post that. Oh yeah, Worms Way was seriously under attack. They were in Indiana. Um, so they were definitely part of Operation Green Merchant. Make it happen, Trey. I want to be the center square. Thank you, Terps, for following on Twitter. Let me see how many followers I have. I have 147 followers. So there's 220 people watching this video, and I only have 147 followers on X. On Instagram, I think I had like 3,000 or 4,000 followers before they took it all down, which, it's not that much. Like, Mr. Spliff used to have like 70,000 before they took down one of his accounts. But my videos would get like 10,000 views. My videos would get 10,000 views like overnight sometimes, and I can't do that on X, even on YouTube. This video tomorrow will have over 1,000 views, but like I said, if it was on Instagram, it would have 10,000 views, easy. Well, Notso has the headband, and we are going to be offering that one. Yeah, everybody, please, if you have my cuts, document the grow. Send me some photos. I love that. Yeah, Rob, we shouldn't go to the supermarket together. Yeah, the views that I was getting on Instagram, I really think were legit. I don't think it was bots. Because I was also getting like just a hell of a lot of just interaction with people too. So far more than I do on any other media. So the thing is, like, you guys are hardcore and like searched out this video, but the regular people, the average Joe that's not as into things, they find stuff way easier on Instagram, and they turn into clients. If it was the only strain left, yes, I would smoke Purple Urkel, but I honestly think it's shit. Like, so much of that was grown in Mendocino County, and I never liked it. Okay, so I lost track, loss of bowel control. Memory is still there. So what it said in the NL5 catalog was, what is it called when you can't control your piss? Because it said that like you would piss. It basically said that if you smoke this weed, you would possibly piss and shit yourself. I have not reversed a female. By reverse, do you mean made a female plant? Let's see. Have you ever reversed a plant that was flowering? Yeah. You're talking about making a female produce male flowers? Intentionally and unintentionally. That's funny. That's funny, Woody. Yeah, I hated Purple Oracle, but if it was the only weed on the planet, I would smoke the fuck out of it. Incontinence, yeah, that wasn't the word that they used. Somebody's gonna have to look up the Sensi Seed, early '90s catalog to see what its description was for NL number 5, and post it in the comments. It didn't say leaky pipe syndrome, but that's what it meant. I mean, I think I remember it just basically meant that you are going to piss and shit yourself if you smoke this weed. Alrighty, guys, it's been, holy shit. I just realized it's been almost 3 hours. So maybe this is time to say goodbye. Everybody, please go to my website, GabySI.com, and just check it out. see if there's something that you want. There's a message. It's like a little envelope on top where you can send me a message if you've got any questions. And I really appreciate everybody. Hey, Wig Splitter, I'm going to post this. He says, senior sour and honestly not impressed. That's fine. Everybody, I'm posting this here because I don't want to hide it. I'd say 99.9% of the people, okay, not 99.9, let's just call it 99% of the people that have gotten the sour and smoked it and grown it, they love it. There's people that have said that like they're gonna grow it forever, and so I only have to please. I don't even have to please as many people as I am to make me happy about this clone. So you got your opinion. GabySI.com. Thank you, Mr. Nyako. And with that, I'm going to let you all go. Thank you very much for joining us all, everybody, and see you the next time.